You want to create a stunning website. I've already done it.
Okay, welcome to the live stream for January 31st, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome. We've got Angelique here, Leslie, Janine, Diana, Stephanie, Narc Free, It's My Life. Welcome, welcome. So while people are hopping on, let me do a quick recap of my week. So lots has happened this week. So before I forget, well, I guess part of the weekly recap is book club. Tomorrow night is part 2 of the book Codependency for Dummies by Darlene Lancer. We're doing the second half of the book tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you guys can make it. It's a chock full of info. Just there's so much to cover in that book. And oh, yeah. Okay. Start. I write all this stuff down. Start Here. My first book is going to be free. The ebook version is free tomorrow. What is it? Thursday and Friday. So if you haven't read it, if you're interested in reading it, if you want to go ahead and grab it on Kindle and loan it to somebody else, I think you can loan it or give it, however that works, to somebody that you think could benefit from it, now would be a really great time to pick up a copy of that ebook while it is free. So that book, it's full of all of the words and concepts and frequently asked questions and everything that I personally think that helps a person get caught up to speed with understanding all of this as quickly as possible. So check that out. And let's see. And speaking of that same book, the Start Here book, the paperback version is done and it is up on Amazon. It went live yesterday. So that is super exciting. And I can't wait to get a copy in my little hand. I'm just so thrilled. It's just such a good feeling to actually hold a copy of something that you've done, So excited about that. And then let's see. I did an interview with Angie Atkinson. What was it? Yes, God, I'm in the biggest time warp. Did that yesterday. So go check out her channel. It's Angie Atkinson, and she's fantastic if you're not familiar with her. So she's going to be releasing, I think she's going to be splitting up that video into multiple sections here over the next week. And then I will be interviewing her next Tuesday here on my channel. So that should be fun. And let's see. Stephanie asks, is your book on Audible? Not yet. That is going to be the next step in doing all of this. So, man, I tell you, every single step along the way with getting a book done it's just like each step is a completely different learning curve. So, yes, that's going to be the next learning curve. And it's so funny too, because every single book that I've done so far is has such a different learning curve to it. I mean, the first book, Start Here, has a ton of terms and definitions and all of that, and I had to figure out how. Well, I worked with a formatter, so I didn't have to totally figure it all out, but I had to get clarity as to what I was looking for. So we had to figure out how to do a glossary and how to line that up. And the second book was a lot easier, which is why that one got up on paperback faster than the first one. And then the third book that I'm working on, which is also another big exciting thing that I got done this week, is a 5-year journal. So it's a 5-year journal. It's going to be called, I'm still not 100% sure on the title. It'll either be called just Insight Journal or it'll be called My Insight Journal. I'm not sure which, but that book, it's there's 2 questions a day, and one question repeats every single day. And the question that repeats is something along the lines of like, what was a notable or aha moment from today. And then there's a different question every single day that repeats. And then you go through the book for 5 years. So I'm super excited about that. I just got that book back today from the gal who was doing the edits for it. So I just got all of the edits finished. I'm super excited about it. Then the next step for that book is going to be sending it to the formatter, which is going to be its own set of challenges because there's just, we got to figure out what size that's. And this is a question to you guys is for those of you that do journal, what size journal do you like? So I was thinking about making it probably something like 5 by 8, which I'm thinking would probably be about like this size. Actually, I think it would probably be a little bit bigger than this. So, um, so what I'm wanting to do, and then finding a printing company is going to be another challenge. But what I'd like to do is to print the journal in hardback with like a little ribbon, page holder thing. So that's not something that can be done on Amazon or the printing companies that normally print through Amazon. So I'm going to have to figure out how all that needs to happen. So Stephen, thank you so much. He says, Dana, you are awesome. I'm not even able to explain how much you have helped. I'm a single dad and have an awesome little thriving 5-year-old daughter. So much better with your help. That just makes my heart smile. So thank you so much. I'm thrilled, and I'm just thrilled to pieces that you have a thriving 5-year-old daughter. Janine, okay, great question, says, where do I go for the ebook while it's temporarily free for the Start Here book? It'll be on Amazon, and it'll be live. It'll be free tomorrow. And I'm not sure what time zone Amazon operates in. So I would check like after midnight. I'm going to say Eastern time, but it could be Central time. So if you go to Amazon and you just do a search for Dana Morningstar, you'll see the books that I've written, and you should see for Start Here for the ebook, it'll say, and the way Amazon has it worded is kind of confusing, but once it goes free, it'll have like a line through the price, and it'll say like normal price. I think I don't know, like $7.99 is the normal ebook price. It'll have a line through it, and it'll say $0, like 0.00. That's how you know for sure that it's free. It's also my books, both of my books, the Start Here and Out of the Fog book, are both also in the Kindle Unlimited program. So if a person's a member of that program, I think it's like $9.95 or whatever a month, you can read unlimited books that are enrolled in that Kindle Unlimited program. So for all of the voracious readers out there, that can be a really great way to read. You can read fiction and nonfiction and just all kinds of books that are enrolled in Kindle Unlimited. So just something to consider. Oh, Nathan, thank you. Nathan says, I'm looking for input, facing a double bind, dealing with third graders, school administration, and her mother's toxic behavior. School has been sending home veiled messages seeming to blame both parents. Oh boy. Well, I guess it sounds to me like it would be a good idea to have a meeting with the school administrators and to see what's going on. So hopefully you can move that communication from being veiled to more open, and to try to get to the bottom of what are they seeing and what are they kind of hinting at, so you guys can fully address it. Healthy Love says, I had a breakthrough today with trusting my gut. I quit a client. I felt a little crazy around her. I thought she is manipulative. Her super aggressive, rude response today confirmed my gut feeling. My gut was right. This was a good day from my gut. Yes. Yes. Very good. Don't you love those moments where you're like, yeah, you know what? And you start getting more in tune with your alignment once you start realizing, yeah, okay, you start slowing that situation down and you're like, yes, early on, this is kind of what I was noticing. And this is, and I wasn't, and I was correct. Like things kind of went off the rails, and that's not what I'm looking for in my life. Nathan says, the school is talking about attendance. I spend 16 days and 12 nights a month healing mental health after her time with her mom and teachers sending passive aggressive emails accusing both. If you're having issues with the teacher and you're feeling that it's more of a teacher issue and something that you guys have been addressing at home, then I would maybe the next step is to request like a one-on-one with the teacher. And if that doesn't get you anywhere, and I would say, hey, here's the deal. Here's what I'm dealing with at home. Here's our plan of action. Here's the stuff that I'm trying to do to kind of keep things level. If that doesn't work, then I would move to, I guess, the principal and just say, hey, this is kind of what's going on. I'm getting all these messages from this teacher, and I don't know, like I just want this stuff to stop. Like we're doing the best we can. This is the plan of action we have in place. This is what we're doing. I appreciate her concern, but I'm not even really sure it is concern. I'm just um, feeling like these are a lot of like, thinly veiled attacks, and uh, you know let's come up with a better solution. Postmodern says this full moon has been really emotionally challenging. Yes, right. So what a strange kind of lunar period it is. Tonight, I believe, is it's a blood moon eclipse. So if you're in an area where you can see the moon, tonight would be a good night to go out and take a look at it. So it'll be a full moon, a blood moon, and an eclipse all in one. Healthy love, that's a great idea. Says Nathan, you can have a therapist write you a note about your child's healing for the school. Yes, I like that. Nathan says, thank you, Dana. Great advice. Always great advice. Been years here. Yeah. And back, thank you. But back to what Healthy Love was saying, so much of these kinds of situations, it's so important to have a paper trail. And um, just because, and I don't know if it's the mom that's involved, if that's your ex, or if you guys are still together, kind of what the picture is here. But I'm assuming that you're not together. And if that's the case, then it's even more, I would say, more important that you keep a paper trail going, just so you can document that, yes, there have been concerns brought up at school. There are kind of um, this is the plan that we're doing. This has been my part of the communication. And so you can just keep all that paper trail if things continue, if things continue to escalate and be a problem. MZ Wemsyful says, Dana, I have a friend who's in an abusive relationship. There's a child being emotionally abused in this situation. My friend can't see how bad this is and won't leave. How do I help her and the child? Well, it's really difficult because we don't have control over other people, and depending on how severe the emotional abuse is, child protective services may or may not even do anything. And if your friend is in a lot of, denial and cognitive dissonance about her relationship and she's wanting to make it work, continuing to bring it up is only going to make her pull further away. And most likely it'll make her end your friendship. Um, what I would recommend is if she's experiencing anything in specific, actually, you know what I would recommend doing? Pick up a copy of my ebook when it's free. If she reads ebooks, my books Start Here. That book is full of all of the terminology, frequently asked questions. It's an easy to read book. You can flip it open to whatever section pertains to you at that time. And if she's going through specifics like gaslighting or projection, or if she's confused about what abuse is or any of these things, she can just immediately flip open to the book and boom, there's there's the term, there's the definition, and then there's some examples for each one. So, and if she's not a big reader, you might want to kind of, an approach you could take would be to mention videos about the same thing. So again, if she's going through anything in specific, like love bombing, cycle of abuse, what have you, you could always email her a link and just say, hey, you know what, I saw this, and I know you probably, I don't, we don't need to talk about it. You don't need to defend it. I saw this and I thought of you, and I hope that this might help. And then just send her a link to a video, and then let it go. But it's really difficult to, it's going to be really difficult for her to leave, and for the child to, to get out of that situation. And it's just, it's really unfortunate when you see that. And I've seen that too with friends, and it's tragic because there's not a lot you can say because the denial is so heavy, and most people, including a lot of CPS workers, are not familiar with emotional abuse. It's really kind of downgraded to just be like, oh, well, that's just how their family is, and plus they're oftentimes so busy that their caseload is so huge, and it's so full of very overt, horrific types of abuse, that kind of stuff takes the back burner. But if it's severe enough, and I'm not saying this to kind of move you towards inaction, but if it's severe enough where you're like, this is really extreme, this is a problem, like this kid's getting bullied at home, there's damage that's being done, by all means call CPS and at least file a report, and hopefully they will look into it. You can call anonymously. Yeah, Postmodern says, full moon in Leo. I'm a Leo. I better check my horoscope. Yeah, I'm a Leo too. And I don't know. I don't know how much stock I place in all of that, but it's interesting. I was scrolling through Instagram today. I'm on Instagram, by the way. If you're on Instagram, come say hi. I'm under there as a Thrive After Abuse. But I was looking at all these different posts today about the full moon and all that stuff that's going on. And they were saying, I think for Leo, like, creativity and clarity and these kinds of things. I will say the past week or so, I've had just massive amounts of clarity and creativity. It's been really cool. I wish I could have, I wish I could have that more often, but it's been, hey man, I'll take it. I'll take it when it shows up. It's been great. Hopefully it's going to be a positive full moon experience, but we'll see. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. How interesting. Yeah, maybe. Postmodern says that's probably why I felt so utterly frustrated at work today, because somebody got in the way of my creativity. Yeah. Like I wasn't allowed to use my creativity at work, and it was a really difficult day. Yes. One of the things I've noticed about myself is when I do get those bursts of creativity, it's tends to be kind of the most inopportune times. And I get really frustrated if I can't kind of hyper focus and like just dive into that. That was something, was it today? It might have been today. God, I tell you, I'm in the biggest time warp this past week. Had so many projects going on. Either today or yesterday. I was supposed to go hang out with a friend. No, it was today. I was supposed to go hang out with a friend. We were going to go to the gym, and got in this like writing groove, and it was so hard for me just to shut my computer and go. We ended up not we ended up not even going to the gym. We ended up going for this long walk, and ended up at the library. It's just like this Plinko effect. And then I don't even know, kind of off on this tangent, but it is so nice when you can be creative and when you can express yourself, and that's not blocked. But yes, it definitely feels like there's been some stuff going on. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Okay. And for everybody that's just now hopping on, just to let you know, my book, the Start Here book, the ebook version of it is going to be free. The Thursday and Friday, February 1st and February 2nd. It's going to be free on Amazon. So if you haven't read that book and if you're interested in reading that book, or if you feel like you know somebody that could benefit from the book, please go ahead and grab a free copy of it while it is still free. So February 1st and February 2nd is when it will be free. And you can find it on Amazon under my name. You can just search for Dana Morningstar. And then also book club part 2 is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's see. That, I guess those are the two main things I wanted to remind you guys about. That's a good question. Heather says, "Hey everyone, I have a question, if possible. How do we tell new people we are dating about our last relationship if it was with a narcissist? I have been single a year and I'm starting to date." Okay, great question. I would say I'm a big fan of waiting until waiting for a variety of reasons, waiting until until you have some degree of trust in that person, ideally like a healthy amount of trust in that person, and that you know that you're actually going to be in a relationship with them. So I would wait at least like 3 or 4 months before you even get into the topic of your ex. I know a lot of people tend to, and I was one of them for a long time, used to get into that kind of stuff as just kind of casual conversation on the first or second date. I would just strongly encourage you to not do that. There's a variety of reasons for that, but it's, especially when it comes to like an abusive relationship like this, most people don't understand it. And if you talk about your ex in terms of being like a narcissist or a sociopath, it oftentimes makes us come across like we're bitter or jaded and that we're just kind of name calling. So I would really encourage you to, just, I would just wait. I would wait until you get to know them, make sure that they're the kind of person that you do actually want to date. And then I would start opening up slowly about it. And also kind of, I think, making sure that we're not turning our new partner into like our therapist, that we're not looking for them to heal us or, to really interact with us like that differently. Like we really need to make sure that we are healed enough to be in a relationship so that we're not looking to them to kind of walk on eggshells around us because we've been hurt. And that can be a very difficult thing to do because oftentimes we want to tell a person, "Hey, I've gone through all this awful trauma. I really need you to be good to me. I just can't go through something like that again. I have PTSD." And we just kind of put everything out there. And for a lot of people, that's either going to totally scare them off, or um, they can be very overwhelmed by it. But I think it's also important for us to realize that we can't look to other people to, I guess, to heal us for starters, but also like letting another person know, like, I can't be hurt like this again. Please just be honest with me, be on the level. like they're going to be who they're going to be. And so it's really important for us to have our healthy boundaries in place and realize that if this is not the situation for us, that we need to be able to walk away. So I hope that that kind of makes sense. And that's a very valid point too, Karen. Karen says also expressing too much too soon opens up potential new narcissists learning our vulnerabilities and using it on us. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if they are, and that can just lead to gaslighting and messing with your head on a level that you didn't even think was possible. So if you're coming across another emotional manipulator and you've already exposed all of your vulnerabilities about this is the relationship I was in, this is how they messed with me, blah blah blah. And if they, aren't sincere with their intentions and if they're another emotional manipulator, then yes, they'll start blaming. If anybody starts ever using your past against you, that's a very clear sign that you need to get out of there. Like that's so far beyond appropriate behavior that it's just not cool. So if you're bringing up concerns and they're saying like, oh, you're so jealous, I don't know what this last person did to you, but I'm not that guy or that gal, and uh you know or what they might do is play the victim, like they're the baby bird with a broken wing, and then you might find yourself bonding over abuse. This is also very common where they're like, oh, you know what, my ex was really incredibly abusive, and um, kind of launch in to this deeply personal story. And it's very common and normal for people to, it's a way of rushing intimacy. So when one person tells a story, shares something about themselves, it's kind of psychologically speaking, what happens is another person will tend to match that story to that same degree of openness. It's a way that people tend to kind of mirror each other and develop trust and build bonds with each other. And with normal people with normal healthy intentions, it's not such a big deal. But if you're dealing with an emotional manipulator, or if you just don't know the person, then that's where that kind of stuff can become unhealthy. So you really want to make sure that you're going slow and that you're not revealing too much. And you might feel mean. You might even feel like you're lying or kind of withholding the truth if you're kind of skirting the issue. But you can always say something like, um, I'd really rather not talk about our exes. Like, I'd rather find out more about you, because that's really what it is. Because when we're dating people, it's it's more kind of like being on an interview. They're interviewing us, we're interviewing them. Both people are trying to kind of find out, is this the kind of person that I want to invest my time and energy and emotions in? Who is this person, and what does their future look like, and can I relate to that? And am I on the same path, and is this going to be a good fit? Because another thing that happens is if we do open up too much too soon, and you know, like now it's what, like the third date or something. And if that person, kind of by then for sure, you kind of realize, okay, is there enough chemistry or not to keep going? If there's not enough chemistry, then that can really compound all those feelings of like shame and guilt and embarrassment of our past. And we can wonder, oh no, did I say too much? Did I push this person away? I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe I said so much. Y- You know, so I would just go really, really slow. And realizing too that you don't have to answer every single question that a person might have. That's a big thing for a lot of us, is we might feel compelled to answer questions, or we might think, you know what, I'm an open book, I have nothing to hide. And that might be true, but there's still something to be said for having healthy boundaries and just going slow, because you just don't know this person. Okay. Let me scroll up here. Amelia asks, how do you deflect questions that are too intimate for the amount of time that you've known them? Okay, great question. And Heather also asks, how do I sort of dodge the question? So I would anticipate some of the questions that in the past have made you uncomfortable. So it's very common for questions about tell me about your ex, or tell me about your divorce, or tell me how many sexual partners you've had. Things like that, deeply personal questions that you don't need to answer. Nobody, there's no, honestly, especially with that last question, that's a no-win answer. And so I would say and I would tell, so somebody asks you, how many sexual partners have you had? I would say something like, you know what, that's just, I have found, has been my experience that that is a no win question with a no win answer. And I don't want to know how many people you've been with. It doesn't matter. Like, we're here and we're now. And I have found too, especially with guys that have asked that question, that it's more of, there's a lot of judgment that comes along with that. And it's, to me, it's almost a red flag if a guy does ask that question. It's very immature, and it's a big red flag. So not their business. Um, Regardless of how many people you've been with, whether, I mean, it just doesn't even matter because it's nobody else's business. But as far as your relationship with your ex or whatnot, I would say something like, oh boy, that's a really long story, and maybe we can get more into that down the road. But for now, let's just talk about, let's talk more about you, or let's talk about us, or um, I don't really want to talk about exes, because seriously, it's like one of the worst the kind of first, second, or third date type topics is to talk about your ex. And I went on one date with this guy this one time. Oh my gosh. I felt so bad for him. It was through like match.com or something. He was a super nice guy, but you could tell he was not ready to be dating. And we were having a few beers and talking about relationships and stuff. And the guy starts crying. And he's so, well, granted, we'd had a few drinks, but he was, I think it was more anger, but just starts telling me like just all this kinds of stuff about his ex and like what she did and how she left him and this. And right away I was like, this guy, if I were to continue dating him, I would be his rebound. Like, this guy is not ready to date me or to date anybody. And um, it was just too deep, too much too soon. So, and I've been that guy too, I've been on the receiving end of that, where I was like, oh, I should date because I'm lonely. And then I find myself dating all of the wrong people and then wondering kind of why things weren't working out. So yeah, that's so true. Lilith says, I used to know someone who was extremely closed off. Like, he would deflect any question, including how are you? Or how was your weekend? There's that too. Yeah, absolutely. I had a female friend of mine that, well, she wasn't even really a friend. She was somebody that I hung out with. I actually met her through a meetup group. And it was so funny because I thought it was just me. Um, she had a great sense of humor. There were a lot of things I liked about her, but I would leave and I'm like, I feel like I don't know this chick at all. Like, she could be like in the witness relocation program for all I know. Like, I really don't know her because she kept deflecting all these questions about stuff that didn't even seem worthy of deflecting. Like, it was, I mean, yeah, like what you were saying, like small questions she would deflect. And we went camping a few times, like we hung out a few times, and she would always turn the conversation back to me. And then it kind of almost became this game where I would then try to turn it back to her, but I just wasn't getting anywhere with that. And then finally I had another friend of mine who we were having a dinner party, and I was like, hey, we should invite this other gal. And my other friend was like, you know what? I don't want to, because she's like, that woman is very strange. I don't know anything about her. And she's like, I've been hanging out with her in different meetup groups for like a year. She's like, I still feel like she's a total stranger. And it was such a relief because I'm like, oh, I thought it was just me. But no, it was her. So yeah, I guess there's that fine line between opening up and opening up too much. So healthy love, and you're absolutely right, says we don't need to deflect anything. There is an honest way to say, I just don't want to talk about it. It's boundaries. Yeah. Yeah. And that's all about getting back to saying it's saying no, and saying no in a wide, there's a wide variety of ways that we can say no. So you could say, you know what, I'm really not comfortable talking about this right now. I'd rather talk about you. Or, you know, that's really personal stuff. I just would rather not revisit that. Or, you know what, we can revisit this topic in a few months once we get to know each other better. Or, you know, that's just deeply personal. I just don't answer that question. So there's lots of different variations of ways to say no. And it just is going to depend on kind of what you're comfortable with and how you want to approach it and how you want to set that boundary. You know, to another thing, Elizabeth, great point, says also if the person insists on the question that you don't want to answer, that's a red flag. Yes, absolutely. So because you're if they're asking a question and you're trying to set a boundary and you say, hey, you know what, I'm not comfortable answering that, or I have found that that is a no-win question, and you know, like I just don't feel like anybody needs to know the answer to that, or what have you. If they keep pushing, then it shows a lack of respect for your boundaries. And so then it's kind of up to you as to what you want to do with that. So let's say, for example, again, it's the sexual partners question. And you're like, you know what, I'm not comfortable answering that. I found it's a no win answer to a no-win question. And like, I don't want to know how many partners you have either. Like, let's just not even go there. And I'd rather figure out if if we're compatible than talk about, you know, who you were sleeping with in college. Like, you know, come on. But if they keep pushing, like, no, 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 for real, like, are you talking like between 5 and 10, or between, you know, 10 and 20, or whatever? Just to be like, no, I don't want to talk about that. Like I said, I really, like, I mean it. I don't want to know how many partners you've been with. I don't want to share how many I've been with. And and it's going to be up to you as to how many times you want to set that boundary or reset it before you walk away. And it's totally okay to set that boundary once, and then the second time just say, you know what, seriously, like if you ask me again, I'm leaving. Like I'm not, you know, I don't play that game. But it's very important to pay attention to how people respond to your boundaries. Yes, exactly. Leslie says, you are interviewing them, not trying to make them like us. Absolutely. That you nailed it. That's the big difference. It's shifting things from our focus, which most people's focus is on, I really hope they choose me. I want them to like me. Like they're handsome, or they're good looking, guy or gal, that they're good looking and they're funny, and they've got a lot going for them. I really hope that they like me. And shifting that around and thinking, I want to find out if I like them. So you're shifting it from trying to focus on being chosen to focus on being choosy, because it's, everything is easy to get into and it's so much harder to get out of, and relationships are for sure along those same lines. So if you can kind of interview and get an idea of like, what are you looking for in a relationship, because that initial chemistry does tend to wear off. So there's got to be stuff that's more there, you know, and to get as clear as possible and what is a priority for you. If you're, you know, deeply religious or spiritual, and if that's a big thing for you, then that's important to know. I think, you know, if you don't want children, or if you do want children, or if you uh, want to stay living in whatever area you're in and you don't want to move. Like I live in Michigan. A lot of people here want to move out of Michigan. And so that's a big thing because I don't want to move out of Michigan. So if I date people, I need to make sure that they know I'm not leaving Michigan, you know? Just like little things like that. But it's not little things, it's big things. But focusing on like what are you looking for in your life? Like what is a deal maker for you? And then getting clear on like what are your deal breakers makes a huge, huge difference. Elizabeth says, I feel like I know a lot about what not to do, but I have no idea how a romantic, healthy relationship looks like. So, okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Um, Hold on, I gotta get this chair. We fixed the chair. It's not gonna, I shouldn't jinx myself, but it's not, it shouldn't collapse tonight. So, which is a victory. So, okay, Elizabeth, I have no idea what a romantic, healthy relationship looks like. Well, so in my opinion, there's some foundational things there that make any relationship, friendship, work environment healthy. And those tend to be, open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. That's a big one. An environment of mutual trust and support is a big one. Um, Being treated with dignity and respect, and again that mutuality, like you treat me with dignity and respect, I'll treat you with dignity and respect, so that it's very much that give and take. And then in a romantic relationship, well, I guess even too within friendships, having that degree of chemistry, that you kind of like the same things, you enjoy spending time with that person, you healthy wise, you feel nourished when you're around them. You leave their company and you're feeling good. You're like, man, I really enjoy like their sense of humor or their intelligence or the different things we get to do together. It's just really, it's enjoyable. They're enjoyable to be around. It's versus compare that to a toxic relationship, which doesn't have open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. It has closed communication, like silent treatment, stonewalling, shaming, blaming, abuse, verbal abuse. So it has dishonest communication, lying, gaslighting, manipulating, those kinds of things. Open, honest, sincere. It has insincere communication. So again, more lying, manipulation, squirrely behavior is how that kind of all that kind of stuff tends to come across. Saying one thing, doing another, actions and words don't line up. It's causing instead of feeling energized and enthused when you leave their company, you're feeling oftentimes ongoing mental anguish. Um, Open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented. So in a toxic relationship, there's not that solutions oriented communication. It's that dysfunctional, closed off, toxic communication. There's a lot of secrets. There's a lot of denial. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance at play. There's mental anguish. Um, you know, but because abusive people, so this is where it can get confusing, especially if a person's in it, is abusive relationships tend to run, kind of this roller coaster ride. The lows are really low, the highs are really high. And so it can be confusing for a person to kind of figure out like, well, sometimes I leave feeling amazing. I leave feeling like this relationship is really healthy, that we've turned a corner, that this person's my soulmate. But that's the good times. But then the bad times are really bad. They're full of maybe name calling, put downs, being yelled at, being cheated on, being lied to, being stolen from, that kind of stuff. But then the middle times are often either, you know, not too bad, or there's a lot of squirrely behavior and mental anguish. Normal relationships don't have that. And that can be very difficult. It can be a very difficult shift for a person to make, because when a person gets out of an abusive relationship, the good times, the high points can be so high, like over the top fairy tale um, level of intense. But it's because none of it's real, and those good times are all staged. It's like an actor being on stage, and they're intentionally laying it on heavy, they're laying it on thick in order to lure that person back into the relationship. So, I mean, and it can, and everybody goes through different degrees of like the good times being really good, but sometimes they can be, I mean, so romantic. A person, the abuser hopping on a plane and showing up on your doorstep with a dozen red roses, tears streaming down their face. I love you. Nobody's ever meant as much as you've meant to me. I'll do anything to make this work. Or proposing, at the top of the Eiffel Tower, or showing up at your work and sending flowers, uh, just kind of all of this over the top behavior. And that can kind of set the pace for a person to think that that's what love is, or that that's what romance is. And so then when they start dating a normal person after these types of relationships, normal relationships can start to feel very flat. And then they can think, oh no, what's wrong with me? Why am I not attracted to good guys? And what it really is there's not those highs and lows of that relationship. And so normalcy can feel very uncomfortable for a while. And that's a big part of healing too, is um is understanding love through without the love bombing, and seeing love bombing for the manipulation that it really is. And that just takes time, because, and especially if a person's been starved out emotionally for any length of time, that love bombing can really come across as not only not problematic, it can come across as healthy or even ideal. This person's absolutely making you their whole world. They're giving you all of this attention and this affection, and they're texting you, 6 hours every day. And it's good morning texts and good night texts. And I can't wait to see you. And there's all of this tends to be like a lot of inappropriate sharing within the first week or so, telling other person, I love you. There's, feels like you've met your soulmate, all of that. Like none of that is real ever with another person. Everybody gets caught up. There is that idealized stage in every single relationship. And it takes about 90 days for that to wear off. And then for like the real relationship to kind of settle in. And so mature people, and if you've been around an emotional manipulator, you probably realize like, man, this feels really immature. Like I feel like I'm dealing with a teenager. Here's this grown person professing their love for me, and we've only been on 5 dates, you know? And but it can be easy to get sucked in by that, because it's like, man, but I really do feel like this person's my soulmate. I have this deep connection I can't deny towards this person. So maybe there's something wrong with me that I can't just, let myself fall so completely so quickly. But, it's you just everybody's on their best behavior for like the first 90 days, and nobody's seeing the situation clearly. You've got a lot of oxytocin and dopamine and different chemicals coursing through your veins that are it's that lust period, that idealized stage. And then once the reality of the person starts showing through, then it can be like, oh, what's going on here? So it's important to go slow. It's all about valuing yourself, which includes valuing your time and your energy and your emotions. So I hope that helps. That was kind of a long-winded answer. I apologize for that. And here's the thing too. So a lot of um, people, when they do start dating again, and they are starting to date like normal, like quote unquote normal people, and it feels kind of um, there's not that level of love bombing and that level of intensity that goes along with love bombing. They can get upset with themselves, and they're like, man, what's wrong with me? Why am I not attracted to this person? It must be because I'm missing the love bombing. And that might be a big part of it. But there's also something to be said that you're just not going to have chemistry with everybody. So just because you're not attracted to a person doesn't mean that you're not attracted to good guys or good girls. It just means that, you're just not going to have chemistry with everybody. Like they can be handsome, they can be, or good looking, they can be funny, they can, you could have a lot in common with them, but if there's something to be said for that spark. So I guess just kind of realize that too. Elizabeth says, is that part of codependency that may cause one to be pulled in to a kind of spell? I hope this makes sense. Yes and no. So I would say it's definitely a a sign of empty buckets, or what I call empty buckets. And so if a person's been going around with this emotional bucket, we all have buckets, right? We have a bucket of our physical needs and our emotional needs. And if either one of those buckets is running low, it's going to really negatively impact our decision making. And so if our emotional needs bucket is low, then and oftentimes we might not even realize it. And we're going to start acting impulsively in order to get that bucket filled up. And we're not going to be realizing it. But the cool thing is, like, once you do realize kind of why you're doing what you're doing, that compulsiveness tends to simmer down. Like, you can stop it and slow it down. So I had given the example in previous videos. So, like, for example, in my life, I had the empty bucket. I had been walking around feeling unloved and unimportant for a very long time. And because of that, I just drank up that love bombing, because here's somebody coming into my life making me feel very loved, very important, making me their whole world. And it felt too good to be true, but it also felt so right. And so all of that hesitation that I felt about that, thinking this is very immature for another person like in their 40s to tell me that they love me, that they want to make me their whole world, for them to drop their whole life and make me their whole world. But I justified it thinking to myself, well, maybe it's just because I've been hurt so many times before that I just can't let myself be loved. And that this is healthy love. And I just have this problem. I can't just love completely right off the bat. And so once I realized the repeating theme with all of these different problematic people in my life, whether it was with men or whether it was with friends, was the love bombing and the empty buckets within myself that was those needs that was meeting. And so once I realized that, I'm like, okay, I really need to get on making myself feel love. That stuff needs to come from within, and to continue to look for it from outside was going to forever set me up to fail, and probably forever set me up to get tangled up with emotional manipulators. But even if I had gotten, quote unquote, tangled up with a really great guy, if he left, then I would have been, or he died or what have you, I would have been still back to square one. So it's never a healthy thing to look outside of ourselves for somebody else to make us feel like loved and important. Like, we kind of need to get that bucket up to a place where it's full. And then, and really only then can we start interacting with people in a more um, healthy way, where they can act loving and they're doing things to let us know that we are important to them. But, um, we're not needy or clingy or needing that constant validation or reassurance that we're somehow okay. And that was the pattern that I had been running. And so some other examples would be, a person could have, let's say they've been married for, I don't know, any length of time, and their spouse dies. And now they find themselves as a widow or a widower, and they decide, okay, I'm going to start dating again. There's a very solid chance that they're going to get tangled up with an emotional manipulator, either online or in person, because if they're dating from a place of loneliness, and especially if they've spent their whole life, you know, um, looking towards to their partner to meet their emotional needs, then they're kind of just lost at sea unless they're with somebody else. So, and a lot of codependent people that have codependent type behaviors do tend to look to other people. It's that mindset of, you complete me. I'm not whole unless I have other people to make me whole. Like, it's that feeling of of incompleteness if we're single, or um, it's getting that validation and all of that stuff from outside of ourselves. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with like wanting to be in a relationship or anything like that. It's more of the driving need behind that stuff. It's the difference between making another person the candles on your cake and making another person your whole cake, if that makes more sense. Yep, kitties are cute. Says, I saw a meme the other day that healthy people don't brag on social media about how great their life is or how great their romance is. That healthy people don't try to prove it, they just live it. Oh, absolutely. There was a term I came across the other day that I thought was so perfect, and they called it a showmance. And it's so true. It's just, and abusers are notorious for this. So after they discard their relationship or something happens, they'll start posting on social media with their new partner, how happy they are, how wonderful they are, blah, blah, blah. And it comes across like this is all for show. It's immature, and it comes across as immature to most people. And it can come across, of course, as incredibly hurtful too, because it's like, oh, maybe it really was me. Because now they seem, boy, they were so horrible to me, but now they really sure seem to have found that new person, and they're so happy and so in love, and they're going on vacations and they're doing all this stuff that they never did with me. So maybe it was me. But really it's that showmance. It's to prove to themselves and to the world that um, you know, that their life is wonderful, that they're not the problem. And it's also too, like what you're seeing is the idealized stage for the next target with that kind of stuff. But yeah, whenever people go to great lengths to prove something that they don't need to prove, I'm always highly suspect of it. Whether if it's a person that says something like, when people offer up details to things that they don't need to give details about, I'm always suspect of that. So if somebody says something like, I would never hurt you, like that's spooky, because I would, like, I would assume that, right? Or um if they give a lot of details about this story and like where they've been, it's sort of like they're trying so hard to prove. And the reason people do this, when they give so many details and try so hard to prove something, is it's they know that they're lying, and so they're trying to prove it to themselves. It's interesting how the human brain works. Doug, hello. Doug says, Dana, thank you for all the healing and the live streams. And to all, I hope you are healing and safe. You are all loved. Namaste. Well, thank you, Doug. And you too, my friend. I hope that you are doing well. Kitties are cute says, yeah, showmance is definitely a word I need to add to my vocabulary. And that's the thing too, with social media is, most people, if not everybody on social media, it's an edited reality. People, they put the best pictures of themselves up. They post about the most interesting things. They tend to post about the most, their vacation. It's like their highlight reel, right? Like of a person's life. And so, and that can be so negative, because if we're going around comparing our, normal life, right? Like our kind of, because normal life is not, it doesn't, it's not so intense all the time. If we're just comparing our normal life to somebody else's highlight reel, then it can cause a lot of like deep insecurity and depression and anxiety and feelings of inferiority and all kinds of stuff. But you just got to realize those pictures oftentimes, they're posting the best ones, they've been photoshopped, they're posting all about how great their kids are, but or their spouse or what have you, but it's only a slice of what's really going on. Alex says, I keep trying to imagine what frame of mind I would need to have to be in to film my mansion, my baby, my hot husband, and my bikini all over social media. Oh, and my expensive cars. Yeah. It's that desperate need for validation. Kim Kardashian came out with I forget where I heard this the other day, had been, I guess, complaining that her tweets weren't getting as many reshares and likes and whatnot as they normally got. And so she put out a bunch of photos, like just like girl, you were so thirsty, like just these desperate, like attention seeking posts of, her butt and her boobs and her, these, like you can see everything, and it's just it's just so, like needy, and it's sad. It's sad when a person gets to that point where they need all of that validation from other people, or they don't feel relevant. It's a sad place to be. Good for you. Spring Goodwater says, I was raised with crumbs of love and attention, and so I learned very young a false truth. I am now learning I deserve more than crumbs. Yes. And that's a very big aha moment to have, to realize, wow, okay, yeah, I've been existing off of crumbs for a really long time now. And, um, I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's just amazing when you have a few of those aha moments that are just such game changers. And you're like, you know what? I, uh, I deserve to have quality people in my life that are nourishing, that give as much as I give. And once we can raise our levels of self-worth to believe like I am worth more than crumbs, then we stop trying to make crumbs be enough. And then it's just it changes who we hang out with. It changes everything. Everything. Because then we can see the crumbs for what they are, instead of trying to deny it and convince ourselves that it's okay, that crumbs are enough, that it's not. Yes, Lilith says, I used to think crumbs was the whole piece of the pie. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And okay, so vegan yogi says, yes, I'm sure there are people with healthy relationships who post happy, genuine times. I post photos of myself in a bikini because I'm proud of my body. It took a long time to tune inwards. Okay, so yes, there is a difference there. Um, and yes, of course, there are happy people in healthy relationships. I I guess I don't know. For me, I feel like you can kind of tell, like the people that just go on and on about, they just gush all about how great their significant other is. To me, it's like if it was true, then you would just keep that private, you know? Like I don't know. And there's kind of tends to be like that pattern of behavior where you can tell, like, are you having this moment because you guys want to have this moment? Or are you having this moment because you want to capture it and put it on Facebook and on Instagram? Like lots of people seem to be doing that. It's just weird. Like it's just weird how technology has become a third wheel in our life, But yes, okay. So speaking of working hard and getting in shape and bodies and stuff like that, I think some of the realest people that I have seen on Instagram are the ones who have gone on some sort of like health journey or what have you. And I could just look at the accounts like that all day long, where I just I get so proud of them, because that's got to be so difficult to just to talk openly about that. And to be like, yeah, you know what, I am here now, and here's my body now. And um I like that, and I appreciate the honesty of people, you know, sharing them. My brother is a fitness model, so he posts all kinds of pictures all the time. But I guess for him, I don't think it's necessarily him craving attention. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But I like it when you post stuff that's more of like the behind the scenes, where he's talks about like what he's eating for a competition, or how much he's training, or his mindset, stuff like that, where it just makes it more real versus just a really good picture of like his back muscles. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like I have to, I can't, you just can't read a whole lot into anything on social media. Yeah. Postmodern says, yeah, try working with 20 something year olds who live their whole lives on Snapchat. Yeah. It's weird. That gal that I had mentioned earlier, who I felt like I didn't know, and I kept trying to get to know her, and like it just wasn't going anywhere. She was very much like, and again, she's in her 40s, but it was very much like that. It was so weird. Like wherever we went, she had to take pictures of stuff, but it really felt like she was not in the reality at all with me, but it was, we were doing these different things so she could put pictures on Facebook, mainly on Facebook. It was just, I'm like, I don't, it was very strange. I had not been around a person who was my age, um, like as a, I guess, on a friend kind of level or an acquaintance kind of level, that did stuff like that. So yes, technology has changed stuff. It's strange. And I've known other people, um, that have gone on like vacations and stuff, and they're like, yeah, we want to go here just to say we went here. And I was like, that's such a weird reason to me. That's to go to some place. Like, really? You want to go there just to say, like, who cares what other people think? Like, why don't you want to just go there to actually experience it? I don't know. I don't get it, but whatever. Healthy Love says, yeah. Oh, actually, Audie says, I got off social media because my ex was posting happy pictures of our kids. Like he was a really amazing dad who gave a crap. Yeah, that's so common too. That's the thing, like that edited reality. And so a lot of people, that are negligent parents will post stuff on Facebook like, I love my kids so much. Like, here's my brand new tattoo with their names on them. Like, they're in my heart forever. And yet again, it's one of those things like I almost have to question that. Like, is it for show or is it real? Like, how much time do you really spend with your kids? Because anybody can get a tattoo, and anybody can post pictures and make themselves appear a certain way, but it's really like, where is the core of your action? Like, are you there day in and day out? And so many, so many emotional manipulators are not. It's frustrating. And it's disgusting too when they use a child as a prop, or not even a prop, but like as a bait to get the next target. Or people are talking about different types of photos and stuff out there. Yeah, there's quite a few people that I follow who have lost like tremendous amounts of weight, like, hundreds of pounds. And those, man, the level of courage that it takes to put that kind of stuff, and they, I mean, talk about showing it all. I mean, they will be posing with, you know, like their skin out and talking about, like, skin removal surgery or different challenges that they're facing, or kind of what their dating life is like, or what their sex life is like, or their mindset before and after that. It's just I think it's very courageous to be so open and honest about your journey. So Healthy Love says, Dana, can you check your internet? We are losing you a lot. Yeah, I noticed that it's buffering, and I don't know what the glitch is. Um, the internet, the internet should be fine. Oh, Doug is saying it's not Dana. The internet's been weird for a few days now. We have awesome internet here. It's a company called Go Lightstream, and so we have like just super internet speed. It's off the chart, and it's that company's amazing. But so it really like should not be the internet. I don't know. I don't know what all is going on. Yeah, that's a good point. Audie says, yeah, it's so dumb because everybody would be commenting and liking his pictures, but no one would say, hey, why don't you visit that kid more than once a year? Yep. That's the thing. Like they have this edited version of reality. Like there's their edited version of reality, and then there's reality. And that's, what can be so frustrating is when it's like it's not even true. I mean, they're saying that they're a good parent and that they care, but their actions don't match to that. Wow, what a jerk. Healthy Love says, I lost 35 pounds and this guy asked me if this was my winter body. What a jerk. Like right there, I would be like, and we're done. I said, nope, this is my wonder body for 365 days a year now. Good for you. Lilith says, what's a winter body? It generally means, yeah. Healthy Love says, winter body is supposed to be the little fatter version of you. Yes. Yep. And Alex Kane says, yep, child or animal as a fashion accessory. Yep. That's exactly what that is. Okay, let's see here. Huh. So while I'm gonna I was just thinking I'd mentioned earlier in the stream, so I'm working on this journal. It's like an insight journal. And one of the next I should just do a separate video on this because there's some feedback I could really use from you guys. But one of the biggest questions I have from people out there that journal is, what size journal do you like and why? So, and I wish I had different sizes of books, but some of them are like 4 by 6. Some of them are 5 by 8. Some of them are 8 by 10. Um, do you like hardback? Do you like softback? Do you care if it has a little ribbon page holder? What do you like? What do you not like? Any and all feedback about that would be much appreciated. Postmodern says, I used to get so mad when my ex would show up to church to see our daughter, and that would be the only time he would see her, but everyone else thought he was such a good dad. Yeah. It took me years, like years, like 38 years to realize I whenever I would go into a church or had to go to a church service for some reason, like a funeral or a wedding um or if my parents asked me to go to church or anything like that, I would get really angry. And I always knew, I'm like, man, I feel like there's like this level of disproportionate anger there. Um, but I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized, I think what it was that our family didn't really have any quality time during the week. But we all went to church every single Sunday. And then I felt like we played this role of the happy family for an hour, and even as a kid it just disgusted me. Like, I didn't want to hold my parents hands when we were all supposed to, like, hold hands and sing, or share your piece with your neighbor, that kind of stuff. I remember being a kid and just being like, I don't want to, like, don't touch me, I don't want to touch you, like, everybody just go away. It just felt so phony to me, and I couldn't figure out where that anger and where that reaction was coming from until fairly recently. And that was why. It was because it felt very staged, like it was all for show. And I was so angry about that. It was like, no, I don't want to sit here and be a prop. And I don't want to pretend that we're this happy family, like, when we're not, you know? Interesting when you start kind of connecting things and learning, I think learning to tune into your emotions and especially noticing any of those emotions that feel disproportionate to a situation, odds are have a message for you. So it can be good if you can kind of dive in into that and figure out, okay, why am I feeling this level of intensity? Like, what else could be going on? Because for years I really felt I just had issues with religion, which I still kind of do, but it was so much more than that. Oh, cool. Healthy Love says, Dana, I got a shirt from your website and I'm going to wear it to my workout when I'm ready. Which shirt did you get? I have a few up on there. There's one, I should go dig it out of my closet. I'll do that maybe tomorrow. Um, my favorite one that I've designed, what does it say? I think it says, yes, you can, but it says it backwards. And so only, like, you can see it clearly when you're in the mirror, but to everybody else it just looks almost like a foreign language. Like, it's just kind of this very uh cursive font that all blends together. I love that. So it's like a little hidden message to yourself. Yes, and as far as church goes too, people are talking about their exes going to church and, you know, crying in there and acting like this great parent, or keeping up appearances, or and then that's so common. That's so common. And they can really do a good job too of kind of roping in a bunch of people in the congregation, or whoever's the spiritual leader, and making it seem like I was lost but now I'm found, and I totally, I really want to be a good Christian or Muslim, or Buddhist or whatever. And that's a whole nother level of crazy, because then all these people can become flying monkeys that are trying to get the target to go back. So ridiculous. It's just ridiculous behavior. My grandfather was a narcissist, and he was also a minister. And he put my grandmother through hell and cheated on her nonstop and was run out of many churches. And it just, I mean, his behavior was just outrageous, and left my mother and my aunt and my grandmother pretty much dirt poor. Neighbors would leave groceries on their doorstep because, he had money from being a pastor, but it wasn't, like it varies from week to week. And he was always out. It was always all about him. So it was always spending money on like different women. And if he needed a new suit or a new car, it was all about appearances, all about him. And, I remember being a kid before I even knew that about him. I remember being a kid, and he just was such a weird dude and would always just cite scripture. I think it was his way of like deflecting. It was just the strangest thing. Like it was very difficult to have a conversation with because he was very charming, and he had a very corny sense of humor, which made a lot of people laugh. But um, it was just everything went back to scripture. There was no personality like within him. It was just the shell of a person, and it was very much like he was trying to just present this very holy persona, and he was not. He was the exact opposite. Just disgusting. Bonnie, what more would you like for me to talk about with that? She says, "Oh my God, Dana, please talk about flying monkeys and the cult aspect of it, please. Can you give me some specifics that you'd like for me to touch on, like within a church?" Healing Hopeful Survivor says, "Isn't church a magnet for narcissists and sociopaths?" It can be, and it can definitely be, um, one of those environments where the congregation, I mean, I think people in general love that story of a person, has strayed, but now they're back, kind of a thing. Like you're kind of rooting for the underdog. And so I've seen this happen a lot where, this person's had this, they were in jail or they were an addict or an alcoholic or their life was real. It just makes for a good story, right? Even if it's true, like it just makes for a good story. People can rally behind it. It's a great testament to their faith. And, um, but if it's not true, if it's just them trying to get away with their bad behavior, it can really create a lot of flying monkeys, and it can definitely be that added level. It can very quickly turn into spiritual abuse to the target. Because most people think that they know what an abusive person looks like, and people think that that they know when they're being manipulated, and they don't. None of us do. Like it's very difficult when you're in it, especially if you've never been through something like this. Like once you've been through this, maybe even a few times, then you start to wise up to it and you're like, "Nope, I got your number, buddy." But if a person's not aware that they're being, um, it's difficult to tell when a person's being manipulated. So, if they're in church and if you've got a lot of people that are really believing in that their God, that their understanding of God can really work wonders and, can change a person and do all of this. And then they've got this person that might even be telling all of these horror stories. "Oh, I slept around and I was doing drugs and I cheated on my spouse dozens of times and I was doing this, that, and the other. But God saved me and God worked in my heart." And they start to really kind of rally around that person. And I'm a big fan of proceed with caution, because there's a very solid chance that you're getting set up for something. You know, it's Talk is cheap. Talk is not even cheap. It's free. And actions matter. And it's so important for people. And I think too, especially in religious circles, you have people have their guard down more than usual, because there's this implied understanding of we are all here because we all have the same belief system. And so it's just kind of understood that we're all going to have the same morals and values, right? And so people are very quick. This is another reason I get so concerned when people talk about dating sites and they're like, oh, avoid Plenty of Fish, avoid Tinder. There's sites like eHarmony or Christian Mingle or Catholic Singles, stuff like that. That stuff terrifies me just as much, because if not more so, because predators realize this, that people go into these dating sites that are based on religion, or all of these hoops that you have to jump through to find like your true partner. That's prime, you know pickings for a predator. And so they can go in there and they can pretend they can do a great job. They already know what you're looking for based on your religion, right? So they can go in there and they can really sell themselves like, I'm really looking for a really solid Catholic woman, and or Catholic man. I really want to have a life with them. I'm all about, these are my morals and values, blah blah blah. And of course, this other person's thinking they must be legit because they're here, and all the predators are over on those free sites, and that's not the case. And so it's really important for people to realize that it's important for us to have healthy boundaries everywhere we go, that there is no such thing as a safe space. I know that sounds harsh and that can sound terrifying, but it's the reality. And the safer the space the person is in, probably the more predators are going to start showing up there. So, okay. And as far Bright Blue was talking about spiritual abuse, there is a fantastic website out there called Luke173ministries.org, and it's run by a Catholic nun, but she's fantastic, and she really talks about um, spirituality and abuse, and she has a lot of scripture, and she has a very, in my opinion, very healthy, grounded approach to sorting out a lot of commonly used scripture that's oftentimes skewed and turned against a person in order to keep them in this abusive situation. So like I said, in my opinion, she has a very healthy mindset when it comes to understanding scripture and God and abuse. So maybe check out her website. Okay. Oh, that's terrible. Healing Hopeful says, I knew a man whose wife was very religious. She used to tell him that she was going to be saved, but he was not. Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's uh yeah, very damaging. Alex says, I just got rid of a scripture citing acquaintance too. I felt like he was trying to build a cult. Yeah, you know what I've noticed a lot lately, and maybe this has always been a thing and I'm just now noticing it, but there seems to be like an awful lot of people out there running around claiming to be either enlightened or a prophet. I don't know. Has that always been a thing and I'm just now seeing it, or what is that about? Um, my mom, speaking of which, had she does okay, so she rents out the top floor of her house. It's like she's got like a one bedroom and a bathroom and like a little tiny living room up there, and she rents it out. I think in part she doesn't like to be alone, and I think she's also very frugal. Like she doesn't need the money, but I don't know. Anyways, she rents out that, and that terrifies me because she's older. She's 74, and I'm like, "Oh my God." I lose sleep over it because, it's just scary. Well, anyways, so she had this married couple that was living up there for about a year, and the guy was really weird, and he one day tells her that he thinks that he's a prophet, And my mom is so funny. So she's, um, she just is, can be so cute sometimes. And so she's like, well, really? Well, now, why do you think that? And well, can you tell me more about that? And just starts, then this guy just had, oh, I think he was a narcissist. He just was so grandiose and so delusional. And he had quit his job, and his wife had been supporting him. She was cleaning hotel rooms, supporting him while he finished this book. But he'd been working on this book for like years and years now. And he really felt that any work would be beneath him. And it was just a very strange situation. I was so scared. I'm like, oh, mom, you got to get people out of your house. Like, this guy's nuts. And it sounds like a very toxic relationship. And, I don't know. It was just very strange. But I see a lot of the stuff on the internet too, and on YouTube, with people saying that they're, yep, thinking that they're a prophet and that they're enlightened, and uh, all this kind of stuff. And I agree. Princess says spiritual abuse makes a bad name for good and sincere people of faith. Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it just goes to show that whenever there is manipulation involved, that nothing is safe and nothing is sacred, that anything can be skewed and twisted to some sort of dark, bizarre, destructive ideology. It's amazing and saddening, the stuff that scripture and that religion in general has been twisted to justify over the years. And I agree completely. The stuff that's twisted into, like justifying slavery, justifying misogyny, justifying abuse, justifying, you know, uh, just sexual abuse, all kinds of horrific things. That's not God, and that's so incredibly far away from what God is about, that it's just sickening, and it's saddening that people could ever even get those two things twisted up. Interesting. There's a divorce care at a church I have attended that has a no dating policy. The group seemed confused why I was happy to learn as much. They all wanted to find the next wife or husband. Some were on marriage 3 or 4. Yep. I think that's very common with a lot of groups. It's sort of like within, at least like within 12-step groups, and even like within our support group. Well, with 12-step groups, it's kind of this joke that like the 13th step is dating, because people, and I think a lot of what happens in 12-step groups is there's that sense of intimacy, which I would imagine is very much the same as like a divorce type group at church, where people are sharing deeply personal things about themselves and their struggle and their highs and their lows in life and all kinds of stuff. And so it creates this level of intimacy, which may or may not actually be there. And so it's, then people can start letting their guard down and feeling comfortable around this other person, and then feelings can develop. And plus too, I think relationships are a great way, or a very common way, I should say, of bypassing uncomfortable emotions. If a person's trying to deal with the grieving divorce, or they're trying to focus on getting sober, all of that stuff's going to kick up all these uncomfortable emotions. And it's, I would think, a very normal, natural thing for a person to not want to deal with that kind of stuff head on, and kind of take that path of least resistance and think, and of course, this is all like subconscious, right? But to be like, wow, this is really uncomfortable to deal with my abuse as a child and how this kind of contributed to my alcoholism or my divorce. And instead of dealing with that stuff, boy, that person sitting over there is kind of cute. And then kind of, because when we have that relationship kick up, it's that, again, it's that idealized stage, and there's all that oxytocin, and we're dopamine, and we're feeling really good. And, you're kind of, it's all of that, those, um, just that initial stage of lust that happens where you start feeling good. It's like a drug, you start feeling like you're seeing the world in technicolor and walking on cloud nine and everything is good again. But it's really bypassing from doing the hard work. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to anything, whether it's religion or you know anything, advice, support groups, um, yeah, anything, therapy, anything, where I think it's just so important that everybody thinks for themselves and takes action from a place of kind of, what do you believe, like what it feels right for you, what feels healthy for you, um, and we have kind of that internal guidance system there for a reason, and it's so important that we learn to really tune into that, because some of these cults, I think a lot of cults really aren't intentional. Like, I don't think that it's a cult leader that's kind of mapping out some sort of nefarious strategy to take over the world. And I don't think that they break it down like, okay, now we're gonna love bomb them from like Monday to Thursday, but then on Friday we're gonna start kind of with the weird behavior, and then Saturday we're gonna go back to being loving again. Like, I don't think that it's like that at all. I think that these people really do believe in what they're doing, and they may or may not be realize what they're like, if they're driven by power and control, or they're driven by the attention, or whatnot. Like, that might not be a conscious thing. But like that documentary we were talking about last week, I think it was last week, called Holy Hell. And or if you watch videos on Scientology, this kind of stuff, um it's just so sad and tragic how people, how start kind of following these different leaders, and how quickly things can turn from a really positive experience to something that's just really, really destructive. So, Kitties Are Cute says, yeah, in my opinion, if somebody says that they're a prophet or has supernatural powers and they're not psychotic or hallucinating, then they're just a lying narcissist. Yes, I agree completely. You know, unless you can prove it. I think we've all had bizarre experiences, right? I think most people have had, I mean, I know I've had a handful of experiences that are strange, that I can't, like, was that a ghost, or was that, or just kind of weird, um that feeling of like knowing something's going to happen before it happens. I think most people have stuff like that happen. But I just, I don't know, I guess for me, unless it can be like duplicated, unless it can be, um I don't know, I would be very hesitant to say that that kind of stuff is you know like psychic abilities or like supernatural powers. There's a really great guy out there. This, if you guys are interested in this kind of stuff, go watch his channel. He is so interesting. His name is James Randi, and he's known as the Amazing Randy. And he's probably in his 90s now, but he used to debunk uh, all kinds of supernatural stuff and psychic abilities and spoon bending and fortune telling and psychic readings and all kinds of stuff. I love that guy. He has such he is a magician. And then he began coming across, like, I think it was like in the 70s, all of these people that started claiming that they had all these power, that they could channel the dead, that they could channel spirits from, the universe were speaking through them. That was a big kind of thing, like in the 70s, with people channeling, were claiming that they were channeling, and then psychics, and then different preachers that were seeming to heal people, these miraculous healings, this kind of stuff. And so he kind of put his magic aside and really began digging into all of these really grandiose claims. And they offered a prize for like $1 million. Basically, like, if you can prove to us through like double blind studies or double blind experiments that you in fact do have these abilities on camera under our conditions, we will give you $1 million. And nobody was ever able to claim it. And he would talk about it from like a magician's point of view of how they're doing what they're doing. And he would break it down with like, here are the odds. Here are the odds of, as far as chance goes, with how many you would expect a person to get right, with like, you know, um, guessing like different designs on cards, or um, the kind of cold reading, like what Sylvia Brown would do. It's great. I mean, it's worth watching his channel, because there are a lot of people, I've seen it too on YouTube lately, where it's just a bunch of garbage, and these people pass themselves off as, um, frankly, I don't know. I'm hesitant when anybody says that they're a spiritual leader, like right there, I'm out, because I just think that there's a certain level of narcissism and grandiosity that a person has to have to even think that of themselves. I'm a big fan that spiritual, um, to like anybody can have a healthy relationship with God, and that healthy relationship, it's a relationship. It's a one-on-one kind of thing, and it doesn't come from a spiritual leader. So I'm very into a guru prophet. Um, people, there's people on YouTube that are claiming that they're aliens. Like, it just is really weird. So, and and I'm a big fan, and this is like hypocritical of me. Yeah, excuse me. Uh, I think I'm done. Okay. Of Abraham Hicks. I really enjoy Abraham Hicks now, but she's another one. Like, she has been claiming since the 70s that she channels this entity that calls itself Abraham. I don't believe that that's what's going on one bit, but I do think that she's got a lot of really interesting insights on things. So, I don't know. You have to kind of take what you can and leave the rest, I guess. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll down. Yeah, Malta says, I just subscribed to him. Oh, to James Randi. I enjoyed the Penn and Teller series that debunked theories. Yeah, me too. It's so interesting. I love it when you have magicians, so people that manipulate others for a living, right? That can take their skill set and then break down really common cons and explain like how they're doing it. What's interesting too with the James Randi show is there's I would say there's maybe at 30, 40% that are just like flat out con artists that are just so full of, they know that they're lying. I mean, there was one guy, he was a preacher, and his wife, he had a little earpiece, and they would have people fill out like prayer request cards when they would walk in. Well, then his wife would talk to him through his earpiece and say like, okay, woman, 10th row back, big hat, purple dress. She's here praying for arthritis and for her grandson. And he would put on this big show about the Lord is telling me, sister, the Lord is talking to me to tell you there are better days ahead, and he's going to heal that arthritis right out of your knee. And, he obviously knew he was lying, because they went to the trouble of having the whole headpiece, and there was this whole setup, right? And of course, they're making all kinds of money off of this. But what's interesting is that there are a lot of people um, on that, like, he would run these experiments on that were like, yeah, I really feel like that I am psychic, or that I have some sort of ability. And he would explain, okay, like, this is what we're going to do. And they were like, okay, let's do it. And they would literally be shocked that they came up with the same odds as chance with getting certain things right. And you could tell, like, you almost feel bad for them, because you're like, oh man, these people really thought that they had this like amazing special gift, and they didn't, and they just found out that they don't really have this gift that they thought that they had. So it's a very interesting show, and it's um I don't know, it's worth watching a few episodes. Yes, yeah, kitties are cute was saying, yeah, she said, I love James Randi. He busted Peter Popoff. Peter Popoff claimed to hear God, but was just using an earpiece over radio waves. Yep. Um, and he also busted Uri Geller, who had claimed to be able to bend spoons. And they were good. They busted him in a good way. Uri Geller was going to be on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and so Johnny Carson was also really big into magic, and they had gotten a hold of his team ahead of time and said, "Here's the deal: Uri Geller is coming on. This guy's full of it, and we can prove it. Do not let his team anywhere near these props." And Uri Geller also said that he could get watches to start and stop. And so what they did is they went in there, and because what Uri Geller, these spoon benders, were doing is they would get spoons ahead of time and they would bend them until they would become very close to breaking. And so there would be a crack between the spoon head and the whatever you call it, the stem of the silverware, and they would pinch between that little spot. And so when they would go to quote unquote bend it, they would rub that spot back and forth. And then the spoon, because it was already, barely hanging on by a thread, it would start bending. And so that's how they were doing it. But there was this whole setup period before that. It's good. His videos are very eye-opening. Uh Yes. Okay. Postmodern. I agree with you to an extent. She says psychic skills exist to warn you about things and to guide you. Those are instincts and they can be honed. Absolutely. I think those are two, they're different and then they're the same. I'd have to kind of think about this more to really clarify it. But I think our instincts are always with us. And so when we have that funny feeling about a situation being off, or um, mainly danger, I think that's the most like primitive instinct that all human beings have. When we feel like something's off, it's generally because something's off. It's very difficult for us to get a false negative, because that's just such an old, deeply rooted, in the brainstem kind of instinct that we have. Other types of like psychic experience, I don't know, I think there's so much out there too that we haven't quite figured out, that part of me does kind of want to keep an open mind to it. But it's walking that fine line between like having an open mind and then letting your brain fall out. So I don't know there. But um with certain psychic abilities, it's hard to say, like, is it confirmation bias? Is it confusing causation with correlation? Because again, like I said, I've had a handful of experiences in my own life that I cannot explain, where I've had that deep sense of knowing, a handful of times before something awful has happened. And I don't, and I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, it was probably different cues I was picking up on that just weren't registering with the conscious part of my brain. That's probably exactly what was going on. But because I couldn't explain it, my brain just instantly jumped to, something outrageous. Like, oh, okay, it's got to just be like, you know, psychic or supernatural or whatever. I think our brain just kind of makes that jump sometimes when it can't explain it rationally. Uh, Carmelita asks, what about a book geared towards young ones, ages 14 to 18, on how to prevent or remove yourself from a narcissistic relationship? You always say that this stuff isn't taught, and why not be the one that teaches it? I'm working on a series of books. So, um, the next book to come out is I'm doing a 5-year journal, and I'm super excited about that book. Uh, there's 365 questions. I shouldn't even say that because there's actually more than that. There's 2 questions a day, but the main question for the day is questions that are designed to get people to really kind of become introspective. Like, how are you feeling right now, and why? And when was the last time you got upset, and how did you handle it, and why? And um, when was the last, toxic relationship or situation that you walked away from, and why? Or when was the last time you felt your intuition? When was the last time you listened to your intuition, and kind of what happened? So the questions like this to kind of get people to start thinking in that direction of turning inward and getting in tune with yourself, and when things feel, uh, you know, kind of just getting in tune with your emotions and your intuition and examining. There's lots of different questions in there that have to do with like limiting beliefs, or negative self-talk, or just all of that. So that book is one of the steps that I'm taking in that direction. I've been working on a book, and I've never really written a children's book before, but I'm working on a book. I still need to figure out the age range for it, but the working title of that book is called The ABCs of Self-Care, but I might change the title. But anyways, so the book kind of it literally is like an ABC book. So A, and then for every letter, there's generally like 4 different things that pertain to it. So like A is for, I'd have to pull it up, like affirmations, even though that's a big word for a little kid, but like, let me think. So things that you can do to take care of yourself. Like B is for, you can take a hot bath, you can bake. Um, I'm trying to think of some more. So, anyways, it goes through. So, kind of getting people to get more in tune with what self care looks like. And then there's like a little kind of paragraph or so at the beginning that talks about self care, and that it's not about being a luxury. It's a necessity, and it's really important that we kind of learn to tune into our emotions. So, I think E was about tuning into your emotions and learning your emotional scale of when something feels good and when something feels bad, and to start thinking about things that way. Uh, but yeah, I am all about. I have so many books inside of me that I want to write about this stuff for different age groups, because I think it would be helpful. Another book that, here's the thing, my brain, it's like, if you take a can of soda and you shake it up and you open it, that's my creative process. Like it's messy and disorganized and chaotic, and I'm trying to rein it in and just focus on like one thing at a time, and then like getting that done. But another book that I've been working on has to do with like 77 lessons that I learned from dating a sociopath, and that I think is um, definitely age appropriate for like junior high, high school, and adults. And it's all about, you know dating and self-love and self-worth, and your intuition and your emotions and all of this stuff. So I think it would be really great for uh, to have a TV show. I don't know if I'm the person to do something like that, but I think it'd be great if somebody did, to have a TV show very similar to Sesame Street, but for like emotional health, and where it was just kind of, good, wholesome show that really dealt with some life issues. Sesame Street, that was the good thing about that show, is that they really did deal with a lot of, legit life issues on there. People are talking about other woo-woo things. Let's see here. So Bonnie says, so is the psychic thing real then? I think here's my take on it. I think psychic abilities in terms of intuition are real. Psychic abilities in terms of, I think how it's maybe more understood by the mainstream, like being able to connect with the dead, like John Edwards or Sylvia Brown. I think that stuff, no, that's just cold reading. That stuff's all a bunch of bogus. Um, and it's been proven to be bogus. So it's not just my opinion. It's, if a person can't demonstrate it with any accuracy, then this is another thing with the James Randi's channel, which I thought was fantastic, is he pointed it out. He's like, okay, we're going to break down these interactions between you and these other people. You cycled through like 26 different names, and the person, the quote unquote psychic, may not even realize that they're doing this. In their mind, they could really think, well, and here James Randi had a really great point. He's like, how come people during psychic readings, they can't tell you their name? They'll be like, okay, the psychic is like, it starts with maybe a J or an R, is like a Roger or a James or a Jared or a Jim or a Randy or a Rory. And then as soon as they hit on it, they're like, okay, that's it. It's a James. Okay. Thinking like an older man, and then if there's so much information that our brains can pick up on just by looking at a person, right? So like if somebody were to do a cold reading on me, they would probably guess that I'm, in my early 40s. They would probably guess that um, my parents would be probably in their early 70s or late 60s. So it would be a safe assumption for them to think that I have grandparents that have passed on, right? Or that, um, so like there's things that you can just kind of assume about a person just by looking at them. And I think that's a lot of what's for the ones that really believe that they have these abilities. I think that they're doing a lot of this cold reading intuitively and they're not even aware of it. And so, um, any little piece of information that the person gives them, they start kind of weaving this into like their narrative and putting pieces together. But no, I don't think that uh I don't think that there's any of these like supernatural abilities. If a person can't demonstrate it uh, and duplicate it, then to me it doesn't exist. It's just a fluke, and that's the difference. It's kind of confusing causation and correlation. Because it can be dumb luck that a person could just hit on certain information or be correct about certain things, but it doesn't mean that they have some sort of supernatural ability. Okay. Let me scroll up here. That's a good question, postmodern. Postmodern says, is it out there to believe that thoughts and emotions affect physical objects? I don't know. I don't know because I will tell you, maybe it is, but I will tell you that in my experience, I um, feel sometimes that certain objects have a heavy energy about them. Like I have a very difficult time. I don't buy things from like antique shops or you know, flea markets or that kind of normal. I mean, I do every now and again, but I don't. I don't know. I'm very hesitant because and it's not every single object, but it's just certain objects. And I've noticed in my own life, if I and I think maybe this is just a weird form of like projection, but like there's if there's certain objects that are tied to a negative person, then I don't want that object in my house. So I have like I've gotten rid of a lot of things over the years because it's just kind of carries that same energy. And maybe it's just because it reminds me of them. I don't know. Like it might not have kind of a woo-woo component to it. It might just be simply, I had a negative experience with this person. So therefore this object reminds me of him. So therefore that object also I have a negative experience with that object every time I interact with it. Okay. Trappa says, "We've gone full hippie woo woo in the chat now, Dana." Yes, you guys have. I'm reading through. This is interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to kind of explore these topics, and one of my favorite shows, kind of back in the day, was Ghost Hunters, and um, you know, it's interesting. How much of that is accurate? I don't know, but um, I do think that I mean, like I said, I've had enough strange stuff happen in my own life that I can't readily explain, that I feel like there might be more to it. But at the same time, I don't want to like jump to any kind of far out conclusions either. Bright Blue says, "What do you think of tarot readers? I'm an amateur reader." I think tarot cards for people, if a person is doing like their own reading, I guess it depends on the dynamic. Like if a person's reading their own tarot cards, I think it could be very effective, but I think the reason it's effective is it's sort of like a backdoor way into the subconscious. Sort of like with reading ink blots. So if a person, like the whole like Rorschach ink blot test kind of thing, like what do you see in this? And depending on what's going on within that person, they're going to see different things. So what if they're having, if they're in a positive mood, if things are going well, they might see like a butterfly. If they just experienced a trauma in their life, they might see a squished butterfly, or they might see a demon face, or they might see something very negative. So kind of what's going on with us internally really impacts the way that we perceive the world. So there's a lot to be said for that. But I think with tarot cards, like if a person's being like, okay, this card normally represents, whatever, death or birth or something like that, the person's going to perceive that through the lens of what's going on in their life. And so I think it can help them tap into stuff that they might not consciously be aware of that's going on with them. I think that's kind of the thing too with psychics, is if somebody says, okay, I'm sensing a lot of grief or anxiety or whatever is going on with you, if that person it might be a way for them to kind of let down their defenses and explore different feelings in a perceived kind of safer way. Okay, let's see what's going on here in the chat. Stainless says, "Oh, I'm so late." Oh, you just hopped into a really really out there chat. Speaking of really out there kind of topics, another show that I used to absolutely love that you guys might enjoy if you're into this kind of stuff is Coast to Coast AM. And the old show used to be with Art Bell back in the day, and then it was George Norrie, and I'm not sure who hosts it now, but it's a really interesting show, and they have these kind of quote unquote experts in different fields. And like what makes them an expert, what qualifies them, I don't really know. But I will say some of the guests are really interesting and really do know their stuff. And they talk about a whole range of stuff from werewolves and aliens and UFOs and ghosts and the flat earth and the Illuminati and like all kinds of stuff. And then they have it where it's a call-in show, so then people can call in and ask questions and share stories, and it's interesting. It's just very different than anything like you normally come across. Okay. Stainless says, "How did we get here? LOL." I don't remember. Spiritual abuse is I think is what we started with, and then it's kind of, gone this direction. But, okay, so back to intuition and paying attention to when stuff feels off. I think this is, kind of this fringe stuff that's pretty far out there tends to be what does give our intuition a bad name. And so many people tend to think like, well, if I can't understand what's going on through logic and reason, then it doesn't exist. So, but our what we call our intuition is more, it's our limbic system is really what it is. It's our emotional brain. And that emotional brain is the largest part of our brain. And it connects, like your limbic system, it connects from your brain down to pretty much your colon through your vagus nerve and back up again. So when we have that feeling that something's off, it's because like physiologically it's registering that something's off. So we go around, we think that we're registering information from kind of like the front of our brain to the back of our brain. Like we're registering things logically, and we're not. We register information from the bottom of our brain to the top of our brain, meaning it goes through that reptile brain, through our limbic system, and then to our logic and critical thinking brain. So those the so we have one brain that's composed of like three different major sections of a brain. And the limbic system and that reptile part of our brain is significantly older, and it's a lot more developed than that logic and critical thinking part of our brain. And this is where things get really interesting because if information, so much of it's filtered out by the time it actually gets to that our prefrontal cortex. By the time it gets there, so much is our brain has already determined, like, is this useful, is this not useful, kind of what do we do with this information. And what tends to happen is by the time a lot of information does get to our conscious mind, to our logic and critical thinking part of our brain, we've already rationalized it. And that's when things can become very dangerous, when people start acting erratically because they think that they're thinking rationally, but they're not. They're thinking in a rationalizing way. So, uh, that emotional brain is, like I said, it's the largest part of our brain. It connects down through the vagus nerve, which touches almost every single organ in our body. And so when we have a physical response to something, feeling like something's off, feeling that fight or flight kind of kick in, feeling um, sick to our stomach, having a visceral reaction to something. It's because of that limbic system. So those are very, very real feelings that a deeper part of your brain that's much more advanced is picking up on that your logic and critical thinking brain isn't picking up on. So just because we can't understand it logically doesn't mean that it's not legitimate or that it's not worth acting on. And so this is a thing that a lot of people really struggle with when and I talked about this in the interview with Angie the other day where red flags are not seen, they're felt. And we oftentimes will feel that something's off, but because we can't give a name to it and we can't pinpoint because we're looking for that red flag that we can see. We're looking for that concrete proof. If we're looking for that concrete proof, we may or may not ever get it until it's way too late. And the book, The Gift of Fear, does a really great job of explaining this and how a lot of people will take action. They're like, man, I really felt like something was off. I couldn't quite pinpoint why, but something just didn't register with me. But they didn't want to be rude or they didn't want to be seen as judgmental. And so they put themselves in harm's way because they didn't want to be rude. And that's something that a lot of us have to really kind of work at because we're really socialized to, to be helpful and to kind of give people multiple chances and and again, we all think that we can spot a dangerous or destructive person. And most of the time, some of the most dangerous people out there come across as little old ladies or what was like Scott Peterson or Ted Bundy that came across as incredibly charming and in need of help. So yeah, Healing Hopeful says, this is kind of dark, but I work in nursing and I have predicted my patients dying. It's happened a few times. I'm talking like knowing what day they would die. Creepy or what? Yeah. I had a situation back when yes, I was in high school and we came across two of my brother's friends. I didn't really know them. I mean, I knew of them, but I didn't know them. And a guy that I knew a little bit better. Anyways, long story short, these two little kids, I say little kids, they were, I don't know, 14 maybe, had gotten, but they were small kids. They'd gotten jumped that night and they had a knife with them. And this other kid had said, and he was really big, um, had said, hey, uh, like basically take this knife. I don't want them doing anything stupid. And I had said, hey, we'll give you guys a ride home. And they're like, no, no, we're fine. We're gonna walk. And so I was like, okay. And we shut the door to the car and I had that very distinct feeling. I even said it out loud to my friends that night. I said, that little boy is gonna die tonight. And I just knew. And I don't know how I knew. And we drove around for like hours that night looking for them. And it was just this feeling of anxiety that I couldn't shake. And they died. They died that night. So, yeah, and like I said, I've had weird things happen. I can't explain it. I don't know. Um, was it just the fact that they had gotten jumped that night and that whole thing was strange? And then they died. It wasn't murder. Like what ended up happening was they were um and this was back when maybe kids still do this, I don't know, but they were taking over the counter like we used to call it robo tripping. They're taking Robitussin and doing stuff like that and getting high and drunk and stuff off of it. They had taken some cold medicine and I don't know if they must have been doing other stuff too, but both the two younger boys um, sat down in a very shallow stream and they both died of hypothermia. And so like when we last saw them, they were fine. Like they didn't seem drunk or high or anything to us. So I don't know. I don't know. Stuff like that, it's very strange. Is it Where does that come from? I don't know. Oh, that's interesting. Heather says, Dana, I'm not sure if this is interesting, but my cousin worked for the Abraham Hicks cruise people as a sound tech, and the decibels would be off the charts when she channeled versus regular conversation. Hmm, that's interesting. I would be curious to kind of see some more tests. I don't know. To me, like if a person's channeling another entity from the universe, then I would think that the government would be all over that for starters. And I also think that you would want tests done. So I don't know. There's just a lot of squirrely stuff with that. You know, that whole movement started with Jane Roberts, and she wrote a book called Seth Speaks. And there's some YouTube videos about her, and that is like terrifying. Her voice is really, really creepy, and but she had a lot of the same information. It's kind of this, I don't know, the same kind of information that quote unquote Abraham tells or yeah transmits through Esther. And then so there was the whole Seth Speaks things, the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich. There was kind of this gearing up about like the law of attraction. There was becoming very prominent. Very people are very interested in it. Abraham Hicks, her late husband Jerry, they were both very involved in Amway and leading sales teams, which is all about kind of that whole positive thinking and a lot of that type of stuff. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, I don't know. To me, it's just a little too convenient how that kind of came about. But, uh, you know, I mean, like I said, she's got a lot of really interesting information, and um, she is, I mean, she can answer questions like that. Now, granted, she's been doing this for what, 40, 50 years now. So I would hope, like, and realistically, she probably gets a lot of the similar questions like over and over and over again. So she's had a lot of time to like really refine her delivery, but she does an amazing job of, if she is staying in character, which I think she is, she does a really great job of staying in character and not getting rattled and coming up with some really great answers on the fly. So to me, that's very impressive. But there's, and then there is a guy named, who goes by the name of Bashar, Daryl Anka, who's actually Paul Anka's cousin, interestingly enough. And he's very flamboyant. He channels these other same kind of thing, these other worldly beings that call themselves Bashar. And again, it's very bizarre. He is very theatrical. I think his background is theater. But he's very theatrical about it. And I just laughed so hard when I saw it for the first time. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, he's got crystals and they glow, and, he, it just reminds me of something off of like Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like he's got this whole personality and this whole voice where he's like, a good evening and thank you. And he has his eyes closed and he's just, you have to just see it. So very strange. Yes, and Bright Blue says, and Abraham's voice has changed over the years. Yes, and it's interesting too because both Bashar and Abraham, for a while there, and Abraham still kind of goes in and out of this, but has this foreign kind of I don't even know what you would call it, almost like a Persian accent to it. And I think that's just to kind of add that, quote unquote credibility that it's not her, you know. There's certain phrases that she will say when I don't know, the whole concept of like all of a sudden you just take a few deep breaths and boom, you're channeling this other entity, like it's some sort of like spiritual Bluetooth. Like I just don't like I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And um but like I said, it's interesting. Uh Let me This is a really crazy conversation tonight. But yes, I think it's important to always think critically about information, all information. And I do think it's important to, just to question everything all of the time. Okay, Leanne says, is depersonalization and or derealization normal with narcissistic abuse? What about feeling head pressure, exhaustion, sudden memories coming to you of conversations between yourself and the narcissist? Yes, that's all very normal. So trauma is, um, and I think this was uh, the book "The Body Keeps the Score," where he really talks about this. It's a book that was Bessel van der Kolk, I believe, where he talks about trauma is very fragmented. It leaves a person feeling very fragmented, and it's just because the brain has so much to process. And so, yes, forgetting major things that went on, major conversations, just major things that you're like, how on earth could I have possibly forgotten that? um, it takes a while for the brain to kind of put all of the pieces together and kind of create this cohesive narrative when a person goes through a trauma of any kind, whether it's a car accident, a death, um, abuse, especially, I think, especially abuse, because it tends to be so long, it goes on for quite a while. And when a person's being abused, there's such a high degree of manipulation that it takes a while for a person to figure out, like, what happened. And every time they get a different piece of information, they learn about terms like gaslighting or projection or stonewalling or narcissism, or sociopathy. They get another piece to the puzzle, but it's like their brain has to start all the way over again and try to make sense of this puzzle. And so there's just a lot of this kind of rehashing and pulling apart of information and then putting it back together again. Because the more information you have, the more cohesive of a narrative there is. So yeah, it's very common. You know, fatigue, exhaustion, um, feeling like that this is not your life, that you're watching a movie, feeling, anxiety, depression, feeling like you're a shell of a person, that you're just kind of going through the motions of living your life, feeling confused, doubting yourself, um, kind of having almost like a strange, almost like a body dysmorphia kind of thing, like looking in the mirror and just really not recognizing yourself. Um, Feeling very detached from other people and feeling hyper vigilant. So, kind of the whole range of different types, like PTSD type symptoms. So, night terrors where you're waking up screaming or crying or sweating, or just really intense, vivid emotional dreams. Feeling hyper vigilant, feeling like you can't trust anybody, kind of wondering who else, seeing red flags in everybody, which may or may not actually be there. That can take a little while for a person to tell. But it's, just feeling kind of wondering who else has a hidden agenda. Um, Feeling like you're just very different than who you were. So all of that is very, very normal. Yeah, Trappa says, one night I was falling asleep and a voice said to me, "Go call your dad right now." I got up and called. We talked for a short while, said goodbye, and he ended up dying that night. Yeah, I mean, see, like like events like that. It's just so, like, where does that come from? So, I don't know. I don't know. But I agree, like they do happen and it is strange. I think it's I'm glad that you were able to contact your dad and have that one last conversation. Okay, let me scroll up here. Stainless says, Paul Parcell's book, The Heart Code, it's similar to The Body Keeps the Score, and that cells have memory. He talks about organ recipients, and it's unreal. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about, organ recipients, like a person gets I don't know, a liver, and then all of a sudden, maybe they have a strong desire to become vegetarian, or they want to start taking up, I don't know, playing poker or having things that are very outside of themselves and not who they are. I haven't looked into that enough to see kind of what I think about that. But I have heard many stories. Um, Never personally. I've never heard anybody. I've never come across anybody in real life that's had that happen, but I have heard that, like, just out there. Okay, let's see. People are talking about the Earth being flat. Yeah, and I'd mentioned in a previous video, there was an interview that I saw between Joe Rogan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Neil, Dr. Tyson, I should say, uh, was talking about flat Earth stuff, and it was interesting. Like they were talking about kind of the different arguments for it, and there's the people that tend to have that argument for flat Earth stuff. It is pretty interesting because it's they don't they have a lot of reasons to think the way that they do. I was really surprised. I just thought it was some far out there theory, but there's a lot of kind of questionable stuff out there. So I can see why a person might kind of think that. But anyways, Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying he'd gotten to the point with people with flat Earth. 'Cause he kept being asked that question. He would ask him, he's like, okay, what piece of information would you accept that would make you believe that the Earth is round? If I could show you a moon rock, or if I could show you, uh, uh, you know, um, pictures, or if you could tour the space station, like what would be the proof that you would need to believe that the world is actually round? And they were like, no, we wouldn't believe any of that because that could all be doctored and that could be fabricated and whatnot. And finally he said, that's when he got to the point where he's like, then this conversation's over, because I can't, if you're going to think that every piece of evidence that I give you is somehow fabricated or doctored or not real or photoshopped or what have you, then I can't prove to you anything. I can't prove to you that it happened. So then it's just, this whole conversation is just an exercise in crazy making for me. So he would just kind of leave leave the conversation there. But I think the point of that is it can be a good, I like his approach to asking another person of, what piece of evidence would you need in order to think the opposite, you know? And so, like, when it comes to bringing this kind of back to like narcissistic abuse, is for a person who's in that relationship and they're kind of waffling back and forth, like, should I stay? Should I go? Is this a problem? Is it not a problem? To get really clear and to think, what piece of evidence would you need in order to, at what point does this become a problem? Like asking yourself, like, If it's not a problem now, then at what point does it become a problem? Because it's really easy to continue to justify new information as it surfaces. And if we're not clear on like where our deal breakers are, then we can continue to keep justifying things long after we shouldn't. Same thing with when people get into cults or what have you, of um this is, and because it's such a, it's like the whole boiling frog thing, like it's a problematic behavior and it just happens over time, and it's kind of this slow descent into madness. And so if we can, if we s- if we're feeling like something's off and like really back things up, if we're feeling like something's off, to then ask ourselves, if we're going to continue staying, then at what point does it become a problem? Like at what point, where is the deal breaker here? Okay, let's see what. Yeah, Healing Hopeful says, I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's so passionate about what he does. I totally agree. I love that guy too. I could listen to him talk all night long. Harmony Jello says, the Joe Rogan episode with Alex Jones is insanity. Yes, I agree completely. I think Alex Jones in general is insanity. I haven't seen the chat with Joe Rogan. I'll have to go watch it. Thank good says, I cannot take this chat. Yeah, it's really wild, right? Like who knew that there were all these these things that people thought. I tell you, there's so much stuff out there on YouTube that's just like, what? It's so crazy. It's so far out there. And of course, I just think I belief systems in general fascinate me. And so it's kind of fun to go down these little rabbit holes and see what it's about. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Leanne says, how do you get to acceptance? I left 2.5 months ago and I can't wrap my head around what's happened to me. That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes with time, and it can help to really write it down, because the cognitive dissonance on our end, like the denial that we're in on our end, and the justifications and all of that is so strong, especially in the beginning. I know 2.5 months might seem like a long time to be out, but it's not. And it's very common for people to really kind of waffle back and forth, and especially if he comes back, or if the abusive person comes back, to start second guessing yourself and think, well, was it really that bad, and what was, did I play a part in it too, and kind of all of this doubt can kind of really creep back up, and to think that maybe we just, you know we're trying to rationalize it in a different way. Like maybe it really wasn't that bad. Maybe we've been reading too much about narcissism. Maybe, um, we misremembered events or whatnot. So I encourage you now to go through and start writing this stuff out. And if you can write it out in like bullet point format so that you can go back and like, you know, at a glance, read through what happened, because it's very difficult for a normal, decent person to try to comprehend such a level of deceit and manipulation and craziness. I mean, it's unlike something that most of us have ever experienced before. Like it's just so outrageous that it's just difficult to fully understand that. Um, Acceptance in terms of what actually happened is part of it. And like I said, that just takes time, and that a big part of that staying in embracing your reality. And that was one of the hardest things for me. I felt like my reality about what happened, it took me like a solid 5 or 6 years to fully, because I didn't know, I didn't have support groups. I didn't even dawn on me to go to YouTube to like look up any of this stuff. Um, I was just I just felt like I was fumbling around trying to figure out what happened. So it doesn't have to take a person that long, like once you've already kind of like you're here and you kind of clued into what narcissistic abuse is about and that kind of stuff, like the pieces will start coming together a lot quicker. But um, so um, there's the acceptance of the kind of the owning your reality about it. And then there's the acceptance of kind of who they are and that they're not going to change and letting that fantasy go. And that's another part of I think there's multiple parts to acceptance. And a lot of that just comes in time, but those two are the ones that kind of jumped to my mind to begin with, and really realizing that you didn't cause it, you couldn't have controlled it. All you could have ever done is distanced yourself from it. These people don't change; they tend to get worse with time, not better. And if you are seeing any type of change on social media or through friends or whatever, just realize with these people, it's only ever another level of a game. Like there is nothing there. Like there's just manipulation and more manipulation and more manipulation and more manipulation. Stainless says, when the pieces do come back together, I just keep seeing narcissists everywhere. My landlord, my boss, my friends, holy cow. It can be overwhelming. So, and here's the thing too with that is putting the term aside. It is, I think, very, very normal and very understandable when a person here's the term like narcissist or sociopath or what have you, and they start understanding like the behaviors that kind of um, you know like constitute these different personality disorders, to start seeing personality disorders everywhere and being like, oh my God, that person's a sociopath, that person's a narcissist, that person's borderline, maybe am I a narcissist, am I, and they're dividing the world up in like very black and white kind of terms. And the reality is it's all within the realm of like human behavior. It's just the degree and frequency of like these pathological personalities is to an extreme. So yes, you might very well be seeing a lot of problematic behavior in other people in your life. However, I would look at it in terms of like it's a pointer to show you, and that stuff might be there. They may or may not actually be a narcissist or a sociopath or whatever, but it's important for us to be able to discern problematic behavior from, I was going to say normal behavior, but I really think that that can be another gauge that trips people up, because a lot of normal behavior is really toxic pathological behavior. So I'm a big fan of like shooting for healthy behavior, being able to discern the difference between healthy and toxic. And um knowing yourself well enough to be like, okay, you know what? Um this is the kind of stuff that I need in an environment to grow. Like we talked about earlier, like healthy relationship or friendship or work environment, it's going to have that like open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. It's going to be based on that sense of mutuality, of that trust and support. If that's not there, it will not work. So if we're thinking, well, okay, then I'll be open, honest, sincere, and solutions oriented, but if you're with somebody else who's not, like we can't over communicate, um, like we can't overcompensate for like their lack of communication. Do you see what I'm saying? So like it has to be that mutual give and take. And so if you're having these other people in your life, where you're like, I can't tell, are they also abusive? Like maybe you really are picking up on some stuff that they're doing, that it is a problem, and that's not computing for whatever reason. So the more the more you key in to what abusive behavior is and what problematic behavior is. So back it up a little bit. So like there's abusive behavior, right? Back it up a few steps. What's problematic behavior? And if you can tune into that, then it'll help you to bypass a lot of the abusive stuff. So it's not getting to that point. And so those early stages of problematic behavior, it's that perpetual confusion. It's, controlling behavior. It's crazy making. It's, condescending. It starts with that feeling that something's off. And if you back it up a few more steps, it's that feeling that something's off. And then it's that feeling of perpetual confusion, introspection. Is it me? Is it them? Do I have issues? Do they have issues? I can't really tell what's going on here. When that level of confusion starts up and that introspection, all that's a big sign to back things way up, because normal people with sincere intentions tend to not spiral a person into such a degree of like introspection and confusion and all of that. So, um, yes. So if you're seeing stuff, but uh, a lot of times it's boundaries are huge, and realizing that you can walk away, that you don't need to stay until they prove your intuition right. If a situation's not working for you, you can either leave immediately or you can try bringing it up and addressing it, or whatnot. So this was a thing for me that I found to be, something that I really struggled with, is when my eyes really became open to this. Is I felt the same way. I'm like, man, I'm seeing, I feel like there's a lot of narcissists and sociopaths around me, or that I'm seeing a lot of red flags in people. And I think the reason I was thinking that is for several reasons, but the reason I doubted what I was seeing is I really thought, well, but narcissists and sociopaths, I mean, that's only like 3% of the population. And, um, not every, and I really kind of thought, well, these people that are like psychologically and emotionally abusive, I probably really won't kind of run into them again. I thought it was a fluke. And so, um, it wasn't on my radar to like scan for. So then it made me feel hyper vigilant, because I'm like, wow, I'm actually seeing a lot of problematic behavior in people. What was really going on was my eyes were really open to what problematic behavior was, and to like the degree and frequency that it existed in the world and in my everyday life. Like I think I was just so used to glossing over the stuff and like justifying it and rationalizing it or denying it, for, I don't know, for probably a wide variety of reasons, but it just wasn't registering. The old me would stay in a really uncomfortable situation because I didn't want to be perceived as rude, or because I doubted my own perception of events. And I felt like it wasn't a valid reason to leave, because I felt like something was off. Like I felt like I needed for them to actually do something, egregious, that I could pinpoint and say, that's off, that's a problem. And then at that point, then I would leave. And the new me has realized I don't need to wait until things get that extreme to leave. Like I value my safety and my sanity to the point where, if something, I don't do perpetual confusion, I don't do crazy making, and I don't do mental anguish. And so those are my new, like way tightened up deal breakers. But even still, like to tighten that up even further, if a situation is not nourishing for me, then I'm not doing it. Like I need to be, there needs to be that reciprocity of like, it needs to be nourishing for me and the other person that's in it. And if it's not, then something needs to happen. So that was a big shift, and that was very difficult. That took a long time for me to get to that point, because when I was my eyes were really open to this stuff. Um, I was doing, I mean, like I was talking about earlier in the live stream where um, people have their guard down. And I was talking about like dating sites and like Christian Mingle or Catholic Singles or sites like that, where people are like, there's just this assumption of, well, then good people must be there because, they're Christian or they're Catholic or whatever faith, right? I had the same thing where I assumed, oh, well, um, you know, because, well, I think for a variety of reasons, but um, like, oh, well, this person must be a safe person because they're a therapist, or this person must be a safe person because they're female, or this person must be a safe person because we're both really into Buddhism or yoga or being vegetarian, or you know what I mean? Like, I was linking up incorrect cause and effect. And of course, the reality is that anybody can be abusive and, um, male, female, young, old, black, white, fat, thin, Catholic, Jewish, any profession, you name it. And it took me a while to really get my radar set to scan wide enough for this stuff. Because the first relationship with Jack, I thought it was a fluke and it wasn't on my radar to scan. I just kept taking, well, there was like a year period where I was super hyper vigilant and didn't trust anybody, including my friends and family. But after that kind of settled down, I thought I was healed. And I thought, well, um, it was a fluke. This won't happen again. It's my timer 'cause I'm trying to get better with time. But uh and so when my radar was going off and I was like, man, this is so weird. Like my night terrors are kicking up again and I'm feeling I just can't put my finger on it, but something's really off about this, the second guy. And the reality is I was picking up on stuff at a deeper level. It just wasn't registering because I didn't have that concrete proof. But that's the added part of the crazy making is I don't even know what concrete proof I was looking for. I think that's why people stay in these relationships for so long and then things get so outrageous that they finally leave because they're waiting for something that it feels flighty and maybe judgmental to actually into friendship or a relationship with a person that feels off. Like we feel like they really need to do something. Like I don't know, they need to really do something in order for me to leave. But if you tighten up your deal breaker stuff to be like, you know what, um, boundaries. I value myself. I value my emotional health, my physical health. If it's not nourishing for me, I'm gone. Then you know things run much smoother. Okay, let's see. Let me. Tim says, Dana and Richard, you guys touched on religion and how people can use it to try and give you support based on their religion. I've been through that and I've had to push them away because they don't see the harm. Yeah. Yeah. And Erica says, I'm so attracted to men with quote unquote game and banter, and those tend to be narcissists. Yeah. And I think it's important for a person to be able to realize like when, when is somebody giving you a bunch of lines? Like being able to tell, like, when is somebody just trying to have sex with you and when are they actually trying to have a relationship with you? And there tends to be a lot more effort put into trying to have a relationship. And really time is the best indicator. Just going slow and making it very clear. Like hey, I don't have sex for the first however long month, 3 months, whatever. And then just paying attention. How do you feel? I mean, if you feel like some guy or gal or whoever is just kind of giving you a bunch of lines, you know, And that can be very difficult because emotional manipulators do a really great job of doing that mirroring. They have this ability to establish rapport very quickly, and they can create that really deep connection quickly with other people. And so it can be difficult to kind of walk away from that. But I will tell you, one of my biggest red flags is charm. If I come across a person, if I feel like they're charming, I'm out the door. So there's a difference between a person being likable and being charming, or even intensity. If have a feeling, if a person's very quick, I don't know. It's a deep sense of knowing. I can't even describe it. Um, it's completely unsettling now. And because of my past, that sense of off used to be like mild confusion, but it's so strong in me now that it almost makes me physically ill. So the more you get in tune with your body and the different ways that your body signals that there's a problem to you, and we all that's the thing. I mean, this is so about knowing yourself, because your body, might signal to you through headaches, through weight gain, through sleeping too much, through your hair falling out, through you becoming really irritable. Whereas another person might actually lose sleep, they might lose weight, they might um, develop, chronic back pain or inflammation of some sort. They might, um, everybody processes things differently, and it's important to be able to tune into yourself. Like, okay, how do I handle fear? How do I handle anxiety? Like, how can you tell? How can you tell when you're anxious? How can you tell when you're depressed? How can you tell when your intuition's trying to talk to you? So for me, if something's off, it's that gut feeling and it makes me want to vomit. It feels like somebody takes a magnet to my internal compass, and it's just a very disorienting feeling, where I get so caught up so quickly in that introspection. Is it me? Is it them? What's going on? Do I have issues? Do they have issues? Am I perceiving it correctly? I'm just emotionally all over the place. I don't have that feeling with anybody else in my life. It's just when problematic people come down the stream, and thankfully it's a lot fewer nowadays than it has been in the past. So how do you feel? For me, when I get so here's the way that my intuition speaks to me in a positive way. If something It tends to be like a flash of insight. Like somebody was saying that they had that feeling, that deep sense of knowing, call your dad. And they did. Um, for me, it tends to be like an idea where it seems to just come out of nowhere. And I'm like, yeah. And if it's a really strong feeling, I'll get goosebumps. And it's just, and maybe even a smile will spread across my face, because it's just that feeling of, yes, that's what I need to do. So learning those different signs about yourself and how your brain is communicating information to you is huge. Thank you. Healthy Love says, Dana, thank you for the space for us to talk about abuse and recovery and healing and the flat earth and unicorns and psychic powers and dating sites. Whatever makes people heal. And once in a while, it's okay to be a little goofy. Yes, absolutely. I love the conversations that go on in here. It's um, you gotta love the internet. So thank you for saying that, and thank you for the live stream donation. Oh, Postmodern, thank you. Says, thank you for providing a safe space for narcissistic abuse survivors to talk about their experiences. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the live stream donation. Yeah. Uh, it's so interesting to have. It's one of the things that I found with doing this is it's it's so interesting how many things in common that a lot of targets of abuse have in common. So just across the board with kind of, I think being tending to be very empathic, being sensitive, uh, just interested in the same types of things. And I really do enjoy having these discussions, and I enjoy hearing what you guys have to say about stuff. I'll be curious to see the comments for tomorrow, as we already have 8 dislikes on this video. So I'm sure the comments are going to be entertaining. So Healthy Love says, I need stronger sexual boundaries because of all the sex abuse. I'm struggling to have like 90-day no sex rules. Is anyone else dealing with this? Yeah. It's, you know, these kinds of experiences, they really bring so much to the surface. And it's a different way of of everything, of relating to ourselves, to other people, to the world. And if a person, if that's been a vulnerability for a long time, if a person has been kind of misinterpreting sex for love, and if they've been feeling unloved for a very long time, and they've been having sex, not realizing that they've been trying to actually get love, then it can be very difficult for a person to slow that down and not hop into bed right away with another person. And um, yeah. So it, and I don't know if that's your situation, or if I'm just speaking to uh kind of vague with that, because people tend to go one of two ways with sex. They either tend to hop into bed right away and then continue, because they're not misreading the situation correctly, and they're not able to tell the difference between a person being charming and just kind of charming their pants off, literally, between they can't tell the difference between intensity and sincerity. And so they're finding themselves getting roped in with a lot of really charming people who are just using them for sex. Or they go the opposite way, and they completely turn off that sexual aspect of themselves because they've been through so much, and they're numb, and they don't want to have sex, they don't want to relate to other people, they just don't want to even go there. So um, either way, I think it's definitely worth explaining. Oh, Healthy Love says, I say to the guy that I want to wait 90 days. I don't want sex. And then I end up dragging him to my bedroom a week later. So if you know this about you, if you're like, you know what, I am getting a lot of maybe validation and comfort and kind of feelings from sex, because sex can definitely be a way to kind of bypass a lot of those uncomfortable emotions. And it's just kind of that it's like a drug, right? It's a quick way to feel good, and to feel something. And so if you know this about yourself, that I would encourage you to anticipate and just be like, it's really difficult for me to not just go hop into bed with somebody for maybe a wide variety of reasons. So knowing this, doing things like wearing your granny panties on every single date, not shaving your legs, making sure that you're going out and in either in public, that you're setting a time limit on dates, that you guys aren't just hanging out until you can't stay awake any longer, right? That you have a plan, like you're going to go out for a dinner or a movie, and then you're calling it a night. So you're putting time frames on things, you're hanging out with friends, um you're not, maybe if alcohol has been something in the past that's kind of helped lowered your inhibitions, that you're not drinking during that first month when you guys are around each other. It can be difficult to really kind of rein that in and slow things down. um, but the more you start practicing that, the better you're going to get, because it's one of those things like, if this is continued to be a big source of pain in your life, you know, I think just getting really clear with yourself of what I'm doing is continuing to cause me pain, and I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired of getting attached to all the wrong people for all the wrong reasons. I'm tired. I'm tired of being hurt. I want something real. And maybe even writing all this kind of stuff down to yourself in bullet point formats of like, why, why I'm not going to sleep with a guy for X number of days. And then writing it down and writing out every single painful reason as to why you're not going to do it. And then rereading that before every single date to remind yourself of, I've got to break this pattern. If I want something real, I've got to be able to slow things down. Princess Poise says, and Megan Good's book, The Wait, helped me a great deal to see the value of learning to get to know people slowly, like Dana says. Yeah. Men and women are often very different when it comes to sex. And um, and this might sound very sexist, but I think there's a lot to be said for kind of that thrill of the chase. Like nobody really wants the fish that jumps in the boat, right? So, and I think when dating, there's a lot to be said with that with dating. There's a lot to be said for, a person that has their own life and they're not, that they are, you have to kind of work for it. Like they have their friends, they have their hobbies, and you realize that the time that they're spending with you is because that they actually really want to be there, versus the guy or the gal who's got nothing else going on and they're quick to see you all the time and those relationships tend to become very kind of claustrophobic, and that the kind of that thrill is often gone. And so just taking things slow, treating yourself with value, male or female, you know and just going slow. Other people see that and they respond to that, because it's like, wow, okay, you know especially nowadays, I think that kind of stuff is so much more rare. Thank good says, guys don't care about hairy legs or granny panties. No, probably not. They probably don't, but I know I do. So that's kind of my thing of, no, this is like, I do not want you to think about me in this intimate moment with me having hairy legs and granny panties. If we've been dating for like a year, then that's different, right? Because then it's you've got morning breath and your hair is crazy, and it's the reality of like a person. But if we're starting to just get to know each other, I'm putting in some effort. Bricks and Feathers says, I actually once had a fish jump into my canoe and it was pretty freaky. Yeah. So, okay, real quick before we do like a little guided imagery kind of thing for tonight, book club tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and part 2 for Codependency for Dummies. And my book, Start Here, the ebook version of it is going to be free on Amazon. So February 1st and February 2nd. So if you would like the ebook copy of it, that would be a great time to go grab that book. So spread the word. And okay, so let's call it a night. And then we'll do maybe a little guided imagery thing, and then we'll call it a night. So take some time to get comfortable, whether that's in a chair or in your bed. Let's take 5 deep breaths now. Just kind of settle in and get grounded. With each breath, as you breathe in, sending that breath down to the base of your stomach and letting it kind of go back up again. So breathing as deep as you possibly can. And starting at the top of your head, bringing your attention to any areas that are holding stress and tension, and making that concerted effort to release tension in those areas. As you kind of scan your body down to your eyes, noticing if your eyes are relaxed or if you have the habit of kind of holding them shut, just letting them relax. Bringing your attention down to your cheeks, to your mouth, and to your jaw. Letting your face fully relax as you let your jaw slightly hang open. Letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Relaxing your neck and your shoulders. Maybe even kind of rolling them backwards. Opening up your chest as you're letting that tension go. Letting your shoulders drop down. Just become completely relaxed. Bringing your attention down to the middle of your back, to your chest, knowing that it's okay to relax, that you are safe in this moment, and that this is your time. Relaxing your shoulders, your arms, your hands, letting them fall open to any position that's the most comfortable for you. Relaxing your stomach, your hips, your thighs, your lower back. Just kind of letting your legs fall to whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Feeling your whole body getting heavier with each passing breath. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, your calves, your feet. Letting your feet fall to whichever way is more comfortable. taking a moment now to scan your body for any areas that you're holding any anxiety, tension, pain in. And for the next 5 breaths, visualize sending that breath to those areas, letting that oxygen from that breath loosen up each area. And with each exhale, exhaling any anxiety, tension, pain that you might be holding. Now visualizing a light. Maybe it's the size of a candlelight, kind of flickering in the middle of your chest. This light is a healing light, and it signifies your inner self. Your inner self, which is deeply connected to all that is good and right in the world. And with each inhale, letting that light grow larger and larger. Feel how effortless it is to have that light kind of travel throughout your body, up through your neck and your head, down into your arms, your chest, your stomach, down into your legs, where you can see that light completely engulf your body. A beautiful healing light, as it so easily and effortlessly just moves its way around every single cell in your body. Sending that healing energy to every single cell in your body. And now take a moment to send that light and love out to other people, to anybody that comes to mind that you think could use an energetic hug. Let's do that now for the next 10 breaths. And when you're ready, come on back. Give yourself a big energetic hug, acknowledging how far you've come. And just letting yourself know that there is so much that is right about you, and that even though you might be struggling with a tremendous amount of pain right now, that this pain is not always this intense and it won't last forever. Keep moving in that direction of what is most nourishing for you. Keep learning about getting in tune with your emotions and your intuition, and knowing that you have the answers. You have all of the answers that you seek inside of you, that you really, really do. And that you're doing a good job. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope to see you tomorrow at the book club, part 2. And if not, we'll see you next week. So take care and have a fantastic rest of your night. And as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Good night.